It's Beyond the Box Score. I'm Dan Schneier, joined as always by Jacob Gibbs. And today I woke up to an amazing morning to see 15,000 views on our YouTube running back rankings yesterday. Thank you all so much for joining us for that show. If you joined it live or after, thank you to those of you who came back today as we break down quarterbacks and tight ends. You can check out a lot of great content on this channel. I want to start there. We've done fantasy football cheat codes, breakout and bust picks, draft guides for picking from any spot in the order. We've got more content coming this summer. And today on this show, we're not only doing quarterback and tight end rankings, we're doing some auction salary cap draft content that you all have been asking for. And I think I've found a fun way to go over it that can hopefully be applicable for everyone. And finally, we are answering listener questions. Now, there was some controversy yesterday, Jacob, about my thoughts on 3-star reviews versus 5-star reviews. And I stand by them. Look, I was not trying to be a mean guy. I was trying to say it in jest and having fun with it. And I am mostly joking. Listen, we're looking for 5-star reviews for the point of it helps the show grow. And to be quite frank, 3-star reviews don't help the show grow. They go in the opposite direction. And we are going to be answering a ton of listener questions today, but we've gotten over 100 questions. So quite frankly, and quite obviously in my mind, Jacob, we will be answering the 5-star questions first. And that's just how it's going to go. But how are you doing today, my friend? And I'm going to start the show with the same question I asked you yesterday. What was my most egregious quarterback and tight end ranking?
I'm going to go Drake Maye again. You've betrayed the brand. I think you had Drake Maye outside of your top 12 QBs, and I just can't get down with that. And to anyone who's new to Beyond the Box Score, welcome. Dan likes to alienate the audience right away by getting on their butts about the
No,
review
don't
thing.
go in that direction. I was joking. I'm joking.
I'm a nice guy.
But I would like a bite of that burger, but I'm joking. But yeah, I'm excited. And I'm excited to defend why I have Maye outside my top 12. And as disrespectful as it may be to the brand, this may not be, well, we'll get into it. We'll get into all of that, Jacob. Before we do that, I did want to thank all the listeners and ask one more time, if you can help us to build this show out, we need your help. It means, simply put, just hitting the like button. Every time you watch a video, if you do enjoy this, click like. It really helps us a lot. Also, there's been a new thing on YouTube that you can kind of boost the video after the video. I forgot what it's called now, but look for that after the show. Give that a boost. And then please leave a comment. The comments really help. And then finally, leave a 5-star rating and review on iTunes or Spotify. And if you ask a question there, we will get to all of the questions. We're going to get to a bunch today, but we're going to get to more as the season rolls on. So if you leave a 5-star rating and review, or leave any star you want, just know the 5 stars are going to be read first. But today, Jacob, we're talking QBs to start this thing off. And back in June, we did a 3-hour show, the longest stream of my entire life. And I talked to Nick about that, the co-host of my Giants podcast. And he said, I think we did 3 hours once. So I look back, it was never 3, it was 2:45. But it was fun. We were breaking down real life quarterback. We were perfectly aligned on those 1 through 7. And we're perfectly aligned on our fantasy rankings today, 1 through 7. But things get interesting after that, Jacob. So I'm excited to talk about quarterback rankings with you. And before we do that, I wanted to let the listeners know that you can listen to all of our content on the Fantasy Football Today podcast feed, the Beyond the Box Score feed. Look for the green logo. You can find everything else on YouTube. Jacob, where do you want to start at quarterback?
Yeah, so you and I, Dan, are perfectly aligned, QBs 1 through 7, and our rankings are identical. I promise the show will get interesting after that, but we do have the exact same QB7, so we've got the Beyond the Box Score mind meld happening here. At the top, it's Lamar Jackson for me. I've seen some hot takes that have Jane Daniels higher and stuff like that. I just can't, man. I can't not bet on Lamar Jackson and what we've got with this Baltimore Ravens setup. Jaden is amazing as a player, but so is Lamar, and he's now at the apex of his career with the perfect circumstances to be conducive to this just ridiculous fantasy production, which is what we saw last year. Over 25 fantasy points per game, over 400 fantasy points. His fantasy point per dropback number was just ridiculously high. And after that, he is QB1 by a fair margin over the past 3 years, with Jalen Hurts and Josh Allen tied as QB2 and QB3. You're going to hear me reference fantasy points per dropback quite a bit on today's show. So you're also going to, if you listen to Beyond the Box, we're hear me reference Ryan Heath quite a bit because he's done a bunch of research on what's predictive for fantasy at each position. And at the quarterback position, 3 of the most predictive stats that we have, the 3 most predictive, our fantasy points per dropback, sack to pressure ratio, which is very interesting. That's more of a real life stat, but an important one. It helps keep drives alive, which is obviously conducive to scoring more points. And the third one is designed rushing. We know that if you watch the fantasy cheat codes video that we put out a month ago, or if you've just been, playing fantasy football for a while now, you know that rushing is a cheat code in fantasy. Lamar Jackson checks all three boxes. Designed rushing, more than Josh Allen, just barely behind Jalen Hurts, more than Jaden Daniels last year. Sack to pressure ratio is pristine and easily the best fantasy point per dropback rate. He's got Derrick Henry, so defenses cannot load the box. He's got two receivers who are near the very top in average separation score, which is a metric that's charted by Fantasy Points data. They look at every single route and chart the success on those routes and whether they were getting open by multiple steps. And if you look at all of that data, both Zay Flowers and Rashad Bateman look really good. People sleep on Rashad Bateman. This is an aside. I'm getting way off track here, but like one of the nastiest route runners in the league. And when you combine that with this ever-present threat of the run game and a really awesome ascending like play caller who just keeps wowing us in Todd Monken.
True.
And you have both tight ends when Isaiah Likely gets back. It's like
this. And how about Lamar's accuracy numbers? They've gone way up as we charted in that episode earlier this year.
Yeah. If you want to get into like some of the real life quarterbacking stuff, go check that episode out, the 3-hour one that Dan mentioned at the top. Lamar Jackson QB1, and basically every single metric when attacking the intermediate area of the field, which is really, really important. That's what defenses are kind of giving quarterbacks right now. And he has the weapons that get open consistently there, especially, like I've said, with Henry drawing defenses up, that area of the field is going to be open all day for Zay Flowers, for Mark Andrews. They just keep, being peppered with targets. And add Keaton Mitchell on top of this now too. He looks so good this preseason. Like this offense has so many ways to beat defenses. It's Lamar all day for me, QB1. It's really not much of a debate. I haven't really heard the reasoning for why Jaden Daniels is pushing up to QB1 for Heath and some of those guys.
Well, Jaden Daniels pushing up to QB1 for Heath and some of those guys because of I guess it's the upside case of his rushing upside, which I totally understand. But I also feel like in most of the drafts we've done, Jacob, with CBS Sports App or whenever, Josh Allen goes before Lamar Jackson. And there just seems to be one tried and true observation I've noticed from doing fantasy for as many years as I have is there just seems to be fatigue with drafters when it comes to not wanting to draft the player who finished number one in his position. It hasn't hit Jamar Chase this year, but it hit Saquon Barkley, it hit Lamar Jackson. They're just, people don't believe that it can happen again. And, some history does kind of suggest and support that to some extent, but that hasn't been the case for elite quarterbacks. Elite quarterbacks have really done a great job repeating Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow. It's the same names we see up top almost every year with those elite guys. And I don't think it's going to be any different for Jackson. And I have Jackson over Allen and I have him over Jaden, and it's not really a consideration for me because of all the things that you broke down. And I even think there's some added upside if we get a healthier season out of Mark Andrews and they get that rapport down again that Lamar Jackson and Andrews have had through the years. That could lead to a lot more upside in the passing game as well. Plus game script wise, like it's no guarantee the Ravens will be as dominant as they were last season. And even with that, he still lit it up, Lamar Jackson. He is easily, to me, the number one quarterback here. And if you want to compare him to Josh Allen, for example, who I do have too, you could say, wow, if for some reason the rushing touchdowns came down for Josh Allen, just a bad year from a luck standpoint, regression-wise, touchdown-wise, what would that do to his fantasy value? Same goes for Jaden, but what's the what-if case for Lamar? I don't see many holes in his fantasy profile at all.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I'm going to share my screen here. I want to show you guys the Beyond the Box Score playlist and reference two specific podcasts because we've talked a lot strategically. Like today, we're going through the player profiles and stuff like that. We've talked a lot strategically about how to approach the draft. So if you look at this one, how to draft league-winning fantasy football teams from any pick in the draft, Dan and I went through like each round by round, and like where, if you're driving from the beginning of the order or the back of the order, how you might approach the draft. And I think there's some really interesting discussion in there about the QB position. And then also the episode that I did with Ryan here is called Win Your League Using Math and Historical Evidence to Make the Right Pick. Same thing, we talked about the QB position a lot. And so I just want to bring this up to you, Dan. in both those episodes, we cover the importance of like these round 3 quarterbacks. It's been the highest hit rate you can find in terms of finding league winners at any position in any round. The quarterbacks who lately have been drafted in round 3 have been league winners at a really high rate because it's these guys. It's these guys who are phenomenal players, awesome offense, just in the prime of their career, and they run. They have everything you want for a fantasy profile. But they haven't been quite as big of hits. So you and I tend to get a little greedy, try to like find our favorite guys in that range. Maybe if you can get somebody falling like Chase Brown or something, probably not anymore, but earlier in draft season. But I do think it's valid to take a quarterback if you don't like the T. Higgins, Jackson Smith, and Jake Ladd McConkey type of guys in that range.
Yeah.
To me, there is kind of a distinction between the top 2 and the next 2, with Hurts and Jane Daniels being 4 and 3 there.
Interesting.
Is that how you see it? Or are you just like, they're all the same? If one of them's there and I don't like the board, I'm just going to take one of them.
I see the distinction after Jaden Daniels, before Jalen Hurts. So I see the drop off with Hurts, and I certainly see the drop off with Burrow. Burrow's one of the scariest picks for me. That's the one I'm least likely to make because I believe team context. Look, the Bengals defense could be as bad as it was last year, but it's so many things have to fall in place to get the kind of game script we got from the Bengals offense last year in the passing game. So those would be the 2. That's where I see more of the drop. With Jaden, it's like, yeah, there is potential for the defenses to have those, as a lot of NFL coaches and scouts have said around the NFL, when you get 8 games of tape on a rookie quarterback, that's when you can start to really game plan against him. There's possibility for that. We've seen Kingsbury offense fall off in Arizona, but I don't know, man. Jaden I think is too damn good, and I don't think it really matters. And I think so. I just feel like for him, I see the upside play. You're talking about winning leagues. The upside play with him is that offense just gets even more efficient.
Yeah, I actually I think they are in a different tier. In my mind, it's the top 2 and then it's these 2. And I think that they're basically interchangeable. I mentioned at the top that over the past 3 years, Allen and Hurts are tied in fantasy points per dropback at 0.73. Last year, Daniels averaged 0.68, so below that number. And sure, he could get better as a rookie, but also his offense was historically efficient, especially when it came to like red zone conversions and 4th down conversions. And that kind of stuff could regress. Plus, like you mentioned, the play calling stuff with a lot more film, teams could have maybe caught up on them a little bit with what Cliff Kingsbury did last year. And the other thing is Jaden scrambled at an astronomical rate. Like one of the highest scrambling rates we've ever seen. I think it was the highest scrambling rate and the second most scrambles of any quarterback ever, behind only one crazy Justin Fields season. And so what if that comes down? That would affect his fantasy point per dropback number. You'd have to make up for it with like a 35 plus touchdown passing season, which he could do. But any quarterbacks we've seen, like a lot of these guys, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, even Fields, Jalen Hurts too, like their scramble rate has dropped after the rookie season as they get more and more acclimated to the NFL. They trust their arm more, they trust their system more, they find answers, their processing is better, and they want to protect their body, right? So that's that. I think about all of that when it comes to Jaden. And that's why I can't put him in the same range as Lamar.
I like that.
I think he's basically right there with Hurts. And then, Burrow is clearly behind them, which may sound
Let me play
wrong.
a little devil's advocate to that, though I do really like the case you made. The devil's advocate of that, I would say, I like the scramble point and great data to back it up, how the scrambles have come down. Though I will say this, the devil's advocate is he scrambled at those kind of rates at LSU. So I think it is a part of his game, and I don't know how much of a drop we'll see on the other 2 accounts, dude. Red zone and 4th down, he may just be an outlier. Like we talk about Brock Bowers potentially being an NFL outlier player. I think he is an outlier player. I think on those 4th downs, the reason Washington goes for it so much because they know he's an insane edge. Like you cannot really stop them on 4th downs because of him. He processes it well. He's calm and collected on those 4th downs. He'll run if he needs to, or a lot of those plays when I've watched them on tape are these 2-way options where they'll get him moving to the outside, and then they really have a force defender, like it'll be an overhang guy, like a nickel or a linebacker or a safety, and he has to decide, like, am I going to take Jaden to stop the runner? Is he going to flip it out there on the other? It's a 2-on-1 situation. It's really difficult to defend. I think that's the same case in the red zone too. So those would be my pushback on Jaden.
I think that's totally valid. That's why I do have him at QB3. But I did just want to bring that up. But yeah. I agree. Like a lot of the time, the defense is so helpless. I made a cut up of like all his 4th down conversions.
Yep.
And it's just like, yeah, you just kind of have to give him that. Like
you do. They get 2-on-1s. It's over at that point.
All right, let's talk about Joe Burrow. So massively productive and efficient season for Burrow. QB3 in fantasy points per game, behind only Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. But we are a little bit lower on him. We've got Jalen Hurts ahead of him, who scored fewer fantasy points per game. Jane Daniels was behind him in fantasy points per game, but I think if you took out that one game where he got hurt, he would be ahead of him. So I think people might be confused, and that's fair. I worry about how fragile the bet is that you have to place to draft Burrow
Agreed.
in this range. He doesn't have designed rushing. His sack to pressure ratio has never been good. His fantasy point per dropback rate was good, but that's the only of the three pillars here. That's the only one that really is standing up to support him. Then again, he's awesome. The receivers are awesome. They're going to be in a lot of shootouts, but he really has to have an outlier season because all of his production comes through the passing. And so for me, I never am drafting him because I would rather take shots on potentially finding a league-winning running back or receiver in that range.
When I think of my worst bets and my bets that have paid off the least in Superflex League, Jacob, I do a lot of Superflex format auctions. It's been when I've gone all in, like last season on Patrick Mahomes and paid the elite quarterback price. And why did that bet lose? It lost because there's no rushing component. And Mahomes is a little bit more of a rushing component than Burrow, but it's not at the level of the Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, and Jalen Hurts. And with Allen and Hurts, it's more the touchdowns, but that's still part of it. And then Jaden Daniels. So I'm with you on this one. And that doesn't even factor in a few of the other things that could happen. Like, could the Bengals offensive line not be as healthy as it was last year? And it wasn't that healthy, but it was healthy enough to keep them up tack. There's not a lot of depth there on that offensive line, and they've had major issues on the O-line over the years. 2, they don't really have any running back depth. If Chase Brown gets hurt, it could change their whole offense. And then 3, it's like, yeah, their defense is probably going to be as bad as it was last year, but maybe not, right? Like, they were the 31st team in DVOA on defense. If they even jump to 20th, that takes away some of the game script stuff that really helped Burrow reach those levels. So it's a bet I'm unwilling to make as well.
Yep. I mean, it's pretty easy process there. Just did want to mention him because people are probably confused because he was QB3 in points per game.
And let's take a quick break to hear a word from our sponsors. Then we're going to get back into the Mahomes discussion. I like that one. I'm excited for it.
You can always count on Sundays with the NFL on CBS and Paramount Plus. So even if you can't count on accurate expiration dates,
that is a rookie mistake,
or people appreciating your fashion sense,
Jim, the crowd is not on board here.
You can always count on Sundays with the NFL on CBS, streaming on Paramount Plus.
Glad we wear our good jerseys.
Yeah. All right, Jacob, let's talk Mahomes. Where are we at this year for him?
I want to go through our guys first before we get into Mahomes and some more player analysis. But yeah, we both have Mahomes at QB6, Purdy at QB7 for anybody who's on the audio side of things and can't see our screen. Dan, are you fine with me calling these your guys? Or if you want, I can call them the guys that I don't like.
I think it's more like the guys I'm higher on you. Like, to me, my guy in this episode is Purdy. We both have him ranked QB7 when most sites and analysts have him ranked outside the top 12, it feels like.
Yeah. So Dan and I did composite rankings here, and I go through and measure the biggest variations between our rankings. And then I list them because I think that's interesting for people to know. It is. Like both of our opinions here. I sent Dan the tight end rankings, and he's like, no, this guy can't be my guy. I don't want to be this guy.
They're not my guys. They're not. I'm just higher on them than Jacob. They're not my guys. I'm not planting a flag for any of those guys.
Poor producer Josh had to change the tight end graphic like 15 times. Dan's guys at QB, Baker Mayfield. Is it okay? Or you're not taking that one?
It's not my guy, but I guess I have him ranked higher than you.
I'm low on Mayfield.
I'm lower than consensus on Baker.
Yeah, same with Kyler Murray. I'm low on Kyler Murray. I think Justin Herbert and Trevor Lawrence and CJ Stroud are fair to say that they're kind of like more people you're high on.
Stroud and Lawrence for sure are my high guys. I guess I'm higher than you and Herbert. I wouldn't consider him a my guy.
And then Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers. That's an interesting conversation to have about the QB, the way that we rank QBs
so
in general.
Low, Jake.
Right. The way that we rank QBs in general, I think it's an interesting point. The reason that you appear higher than me on those guys, because my rankings are for one quarterback leagues. And I'm just not taking those guys in one.
You're just taking like a Jackson Dart.
I would just take Jackson Dart straight up, unless it's like an 18-team league or something.
Okay.
But to that point, I will share with you guys my Superflex rankings for anybody who plays in those formats, and I did move those players up. So Dan's only guys are Trevor Lawrence and CJ Stroud. My guys are Bo Nix, Drake Maye, Jordan Love, JJ McCarthy, Michael Penix, Jackson Dart, and Jalen Milroe. I'm significantly higher than Dan on all of those guys. I like to take big swings. If you can't tell, they're all super young, and hopefully can give us some upside. I'm really curious what this Bo Nix discussion is going to look like, because you and I have had such a hard time wrapping our heads around Nix. And I think I don't want to speak for you, but I think there may still be a little bit of bias with the Nix thing. Because I think for fantasy, he's just an easy pick. I really do think he's an easy pick after Purdy. Okay, so Mahomes, QB6. The question I posed is Mahomes a falling knife that we're about to catch if you try to draft him in that range? Or is he just a clear value? What we've seen these last 2 years are like not representative of Mahomes and what we've seen like for 5 years before that. And what we saw before that was one of the most historically unprecedented things we've ever seen at any position. And these last 2 years have just been weird. The touchdown rate is way down, and we've talked about all the macro level things that are affecting this, the way the defenses are playing and all that. But last year the Chiefs were actually below average in terms of too high safety looks. Defenses weren't really respecting the deep ball. We talked on that 3-hour quarterback episode a lot about how Mahomes, even from a clean pocket, was well below average when he was throwing deep. And it was kind of the same thing in 2023 too. He's talked all offseason about how that's the primary focus for the Chiefs. They have like one focus each offseason. That's their focus this offseason is improving that. We've seen a little bit of that in the preseason. And so maybe it does improve. The left tackle situation seems to be shored up. The first round rookie has looked great. So where are you at on Mahomes? I know you're high on Kelce. Are you drafting Mahomes?
So obviously I mentioned last year Mahomes really burned me. I thought he would be in the QB1 discussion. I thought the weapons would make the difference. I've changed my opinion on Mahomes from a fantasy standpoint, Jacob, a lot, because I feel like, as we just discussed with Jaden Daniels, I'm watching a lot of Commanders games, and it's such a different aggressive mindset that they have, which helps you so much as a fantasy quarterback. They're going for every fourth down. They're aggressive in the red zone. Andy Reid Chiefs teams are just not aggressive at all anymore. To me, it's like worse than like the days of McVay and Shanahan with the back in the day with the 49ers in recent memory. I'm seeing tons of field goal attempts in 4th and 2 situations down there where I know like you have Patrick Mahomes, go for it on 4th and 2. A lot of low scoring games. The Chiefs last year were bottom 10 in yards allowed, or top 10 in yards allowed as a defense and points allowed. So a lot of those types of games, which aren't great for the fantasy script. And then there's not much of a rushing component. There is some rushing component with Mahomes, but it's not at the level of what elite quarterbacks can be. So for me, Jacob, there are times I'll draft Mahomes in a 2-quarterback league, because there are moments where he's going to fall a lot further than Burrow. And I think there's somewhat similar bets, though I think Burrow is still a better bet because of the game script and because the Bengals defense is so bad. But 1-quarterback league, this is just not a range I'm drafting quarterbacks in. For him, for Baker Mayfield, for Bo Nix, for Kyler Murray, for Justin Fields, for any of those quarterbacks, because why am I going to do that when the opportunity cost is I'm missing out on a running back wide receiver that I won't be missing out on with the Lawrence Strouds of the draft and those quarterbacks in that range?
Yeah, that's why I wanted to bring this up. I think it's an important discussion. A lot of these guys we just kind of gloss over because of the way they're approaching, snake drafts. But auction draft or super flex draft, that I think Mahomes is a valid pick where he goes. I do think he is a little bit undervalued. I mean, it's a buy low window on Patrick Mahomes, like it's one of the most talented. He's still with Andy Reid. And there are plenty of ways where the offense could break for more upside. There are a lot of players who could elevate things if Rice comes back and is healthy, if Xavier really takes a step forward, if Marquise Brown is better than we expect when he comes back and is healthy, freaking Tyquan Thornton, Jalen Royals, like they have guys that are talented that were better than last year, where it's like, we know what Sky Moore is.
I want nothing more than a late career Tyquan Thornton breakout, dude. I was so high on his tape coming out of college. It was like a big fat L for me. But if he just finds a way now, it's going to be so good.
All right. So I want to share my screen here. I sent out a pretty cool thread today that got a little bit lost because we've just had crazy NFL news today. So definitely check this out if you get a moment. Patrick Mahomes is one of the players that I featured in it, and it's looking at fantasy points per dropback and passing touchdown rates and how these have trended for players year over year. We'll go through the whole thread at some point in this podcast, but as it relates to Mahomes, if you can see here, fantasy points per dropback year over year, 0.82, that ridiculous 50 touchdown season but then 0.64, 0.69, 0.59, 0.69. And then each of the past 2 seasons has been low, 0.50, 0.51. That's below the league average. His touchdown rate had never been below 5.4% and was over 6% combined across 5 seasons. And it's been at 4.5% each of the past 2 seasons. That's just touchdowns divided by attempts. And then if you look at rushing touchdowns, they've kind of just dried up, which, is a little thing. But he was getting 2 to 4 touchdowns every single year on the ground. And then he's just lost those. And it's not because he's running less. He had more rushes in 2023 than any other point in his career. 300 plus rushing yards each of the past 2 seasons. He's just not finding the end zone as much. And so it's been a bunch of things that have contributed to this. And then I wanted to bring up the Tyreek Hill point. I looked at Mahomes' dropbacks without Tyreek Hill on the field across his entire career before 2023. And it's a large sample size. It's 1,300 dropbacks. So that's like 3 seasons worth of data, 4 seasons almost. 0.65 fantasy points per dropback across that sample, 6% touchdown rate, like basically right in line with his, career averages. And I don't want to, allude to like Tyreek Hill not mattering. That's clearly not the case. But like this 0.5 number, 0.5 fantasy points per dropback that we've seen below the league average over the past 2 seasons, that's kind of crazy, man. That doesn't make sense to me that would stick.
Right.
And with there being a lot of reasons to believe that the offense could get better this year, I think it's a pretty good pick. I mean, honestly, just based on regression, I think we could be making a case that like things should get better than they have been,
Which is what I thought was the case last year, though. That's the problem.
But that's what I'm saying. Now we have all the anecdotal things that also give us reasons to feel optimistic.
I felt that way last year, though. I just want to be clear about this Chiefs situation in Mahomes. I felt that way about his supporting cast last year. Now, we had Rice injury. That played a big role in slowing things down. Hopefully, Travis Kelce, I believe in the Travis Kelce, I'm in good shape storyline of the summer. I know you're not into that narrative at all, and that's fine. Maybe guys like Tyquan Thornton can help, and I think Worthy will take a step forward. So ultimately, I should be higher on Mahomes than I am. I think it's mostly strategic reasons why I don't end up with Mahomes. 2 quarterback leagues, I might be more open to it. 1 quarterback league, I'm just not taking anyone in that range. I also don't want to spend just speaking of auction drafts, I don't want to spend my auction dollars in that range either, because that means I'm missing out on a Pearsall or a Buka for the price of, getting a Mooney instead. And I would just rather have that lesser tier quarterback and one of those receivers.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about the king of the late round QBs. Brock Purdy, still drafted like outside of the top 12 in a lot of spots. We both have him at QB7. I think you can get him in like round 10 or later. If you look at, he's played 40 games. If you look at quarterbacks through their initial 40 games, the only players who have averaged more fantasy points per dropback through 40 games are Patrick Mahomes and Jalen Hurts. Purdy's next ahead of a bunch of QBs who were dual threats like Cam Newton, Russell Wilson, Deshaun Watson, Donovan McNabb, Josh Allen, Kyler Murray. He's ahead of all of those players through an initial 40 games. And maybe you're screaming right now that like, that's just a Kyle Shanahan stat. That's fine. That's what we're drafting for fantasy, like that's great. The receivers are hurt and that is scary. But like, I just want to point that out. And if you do want to compare him to other Kyle Shanahan quarterbacks, way higher than those guys in all of these efficiency stats, including fantasy points per dropback. Purdy also brought a lot more scrambling last year. And so that could be part of his game. Like even in a season when everybody, all the crap hit the fan last year with injuries, still was able to kind of boil his value with the running. So I've got just the classic Anakin meme here. Finally, we saw like Brock Purdy's dropback number increase last year and like huge season, right? No, it still wasn't. So like, I get why people are frustrated and not drafting him. But I do think that we could get better results this year. Last year was just a really weird year. His fantasy points per dropback dipped by 22%. So I told you he's one of the most efficient through 40 games with his 0.67 mark. It was 0.71, then 0.74 his first 2 seasons. Last year was at 0.58. His touchdown rate was 7% and 7.6%. And his first 2 seasons last year was 4.4%, which is like right in line with the league average. I think that's the outlier. It's possible these first 2 seasons were just more efficient than he will be going forward. Because like I said, QB3 overall all time through 40 games is really, really high. But I do think that this is a clear buying opportunity to see such a big deviation from what we had seen previously to last year. If the offense is better, we've talked about this, liking the schedule a lot. I think
Yes.
Purdy is just an easy slam dunk in the late rounds.
Yeah, I mean, you made a strong enough case that I don't need to add too much, but I did like that you pointed out something I wanted to add at the end. The schedule is perfectly set up. I don't think we'll have a better run out for a 49ers schedule ever again than this one, which is why I'm very high on all 49ers. But it's also just the fact, like, how many times we have examples of this. A player like Purdy, who's been knocked his whole career essentially as like a Shanahan product, which I completely and strongly disagree with based on the film. I think he's a completely different level quarterback than anything the 49ers have had, with his ability to process space, post-snap, his ability to anticipate throws on the outside, and mostly his ability to beat you when you blitz him. When teams blitz him, he has solutions and answers. But the point being, like, last year, everything that could have broken wrong for him broke wrong. He lost Trent Williams, the best tackle in the NFL for a stretch. Christian McCaffrey almost the whole season. Ayuk immediately. Debo wasn't himself and was injured and just not very good at all. And he just took what was left there and still was productive. Of course, as you mentioned, he wasn't as productive as those first 2 seasons, but now he gets all of that back, plus an easy schedule, plus Ricky Pearsall potentially breaking out. It's as good as it gets. Like, this is the clear, to me, most mispriced player at the entire quarterback position and the best value in fantasy.
Plus, he has Sky Moore at wide receiver too now.
Now he's got Sky Moore. And now I can't believe I forgot that he got Sky Moore.
It does scare me that all the receivers are hurt already.
Yeah, that's the negative. That's the negative. All right, let's take a break here to hear a word from our sponsors. We'll get back into a few more quarterbacks right after this.
Here we go. The 2025 CBS Sports NFL schedule is here. 18 glorious Sundays.
He's got his receiver touchdown.
Filled with rematches.
Oh, the play of the year.
And rivalries.
Touchdown, Bengals.
Plus, plenty of superstar showdowns. And an epic matchup between the Chiefs and Cowboys on Thanksgiving. Clear your Sundays beginning September 7th for the NFL on CBS and Paramount Plus.
All right, Jacob, 32 minutes on 7 quarterbacks, I should say. What's next?
Now we can get into the interesting part and talk about the quarterbacks that we're different on. Yeah,
Yes.
we spent 30 minutes just talking about the ones we agree on.
Yes.
All right, Bo Nix is next up for me.
Sure.
Where do you have him? You're pretty low,
Too low.
on Nix.
Too low.
I think, yeah, let's just start with that. So Bo
Where do
Nix,
I have him? Where do I have him exactly? Let's see. I have the
15,
answer for that.
QB
The answer to that is
15.
15. Quarterback 15.
Bo Nix below Drake Maye, below Herbert, below Trevor Lawrence.
Oof, yeah.
I've got Nix at QB8, right behind Purdy. And
More
then
along the line with consensus, by the way. I'm way off on this one, consensus-wise.
Drake Maye to follow that. So Nix really checks every single box that I gave earlier in terms of fantasy points per dropback and avoiding sacks, all of that good stuff. Nix looks really good in. And then I think maybe because of Jaden Daniels' like season, Nix flies a bit under the radar. You said he is QB 8-ish in consensus, right?
I think he's around there, 8, 9, 10 range in consensus ranks.
Yeah. Okay. So I have him and Drake Maye at 8 and 9. And if I can share my screen here, I've got a chart that has fantasy points per game and fantasy points per dropback compared for rookie QBs. And you'll see like Patrick Mahomes breaking the chart up here at the top right with his crazy season. This is through an initial 17 games for round 1 QBs only. And they've got, Cam Newton, Jaden Daniels, Justin Herbert's crazy rookie year. Nix is like well above Drake Maye, even in fantasy points per dropback. And it was a great season for Maye in fantasy points per dropback, especially when you consider the team context. But this is where Nix was right in the same range as like CJ Stroud's rookie season. That Justin Herbert season is barely above Nix's season, and Herbert had 5 rushing touchdowns that year. I think some people maybe would point towards like regression coming for Nix on the ground, but he had I think 4 rushing touchdowns. I think that's part of his game. And so the fact that he's like in this range with these guys, I just think we have to like reconcile for that if you have him outside of the top 8, because you're predicting like you're predicting it all to kind of come crashing down. Like all he has to do is kind of repeat what he did last year, and he's a great pick. And it's possible that it could get better. So I want to first hear like what your concerns are or why you would not have him inside of your top 10.
Yeah. So just to be clear, I have him ranked at 15 after Dak Prescott, who I really like this year. Kyler Murray, that's the one that could go back and forth for me. Trevor Lawrence, a breakout player for me. Herbert, I feel, okay about. And then Maye, a player we love. I do not feel confident about this ranking. Of all the rankings we've done on all the positions, this is probably the one I'm least confident in being right about. But as far as why I feel this way, and the reason I feel least confident, Jacob, is because it's backed up by the least amount of actual data and fantasy points. And it's a lot of just feel. And maybe I do still have a bias, but I mean, you put up the clips of Bo Nix earlier this year. Did you really love what you saw on tape from him as a quarterback?
He got a lot better as the season went on.
Improve a little bit as the season went on.
Dude, he was QB2 in highly accurate throw rate over the second half of the season. That shocked me. Ryan said this the other day. I was like, that's wild. And I went and looked at it. I knew there was a game against Atlanta where he threw a ton of screens. And I was like, maybe his ADOT was low. It really wasn't a huge change. He just, I think, played way better in the second half.
Yeah, I need to be – look, maybe it was way better. Maybe it was him understanding the system better and really aligning with it. And he still has Sean Payton there. And he still has, at least on paper, and as of now, they're healthy, great offensive line, great weapons around him, or fine weapons around him with the addition of Harvey. Everything's in place for me, for him to be a great fantasy player and a top 10 quarterback, outside of, for me at least, just my feel on him as an overall player. I mean, look, this time last year, Jacob, if anyone had CJ Stroud ranked outside their top 10, it would have looked absolutely ridiculous. CJ Stroud obviously had massive regression in year 2. I'm not saying that will happen for Nix. Nix is a better offensive line situation and a better play caller, which is really important. I think Stroud is a much more talented thrower than Nix personally. So I have issues with any second-year quarterback in fantasy. I usually don't buy it. It's why I'm lower on Maye than you. It's why I'm lower on a lot of these second-year guys in general than you, and I will continue to be. There is sometimes it hits. We saw it with Stroud. We've seen it with other quarterbacks over the years. Sometimes when you get that year of tape, that whole offseason to watch the tape, you can take away the concepts that they leaned on, and do they have a solution outside of that? Nix could easily have a solution. He has Sean Payton. It's just more of a feel play. I'll admit it. This is definitely the one I feel least conviction on because it is very feel-based.
Yeah. The second year QB point makes sense. That's kind of what I suspected when I saw how low you were on him and Maye, and I'm higher on Penix as well. Maybe defenses will have, a better answer for Nix than they did last year. This is last year's data. I want to share with you guys, and I do think it's interesting as it pertains to Nix, because like I said, he looks really good in all the things that you look at in terms of predictability at the quarterback position. The other stat that I didn't mention off the top, because it's just inherently is going to be a good stat and predictive, is fantasy points per game. And he was QB8 in fantasy points per game. And then over here on the left side, you'll see sacks per pressure, fantasy points per dropback, and design runs. I just pulled up these 3 stats that matter. And these quarterbacks here that are highlighted, there are 6 of them, are the 6 that were top half of the league, above league average in both sacks per pressure and fantasy points per dropback. That was Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Jared Goff, Bo Nix, Brock Purdy, and Jordan Love. We're going to have Goff is one we really have to answer to people for because we have him very low in our rankings. So fantasy points per dropback, Nix comes in at QB 10, tied with Purdy, tied with Justin Herbert, just behind, Joe Burrow. And if you look at sack to pressure rate, that was really good as well. We've got Josh Allen at the top, Jordan Love, QB2, Lamar Jackson, QB3, Bo Nix, QB4, just ahead of Purdy, Stafford, Goff.
Yeah.
I think there's just a lot of reasons to like Nix. And
for sure,
I think that we could see the offense take a step forward because they did add some interesting pieces in terms of skill position players. So that's where I'm at with him. QB8.
Yeah, and I totally get it. Look, everything's in place outside of just my belief personally in the quarterback, and it's on me. I gotta overcome that and watch. I've watched a lot of tape of his. I just gotta see it again for me. For these quarterbacks, it's less so the case for Penix because he only had a few starts. I don't think that's enough tape. But when you have that extra tape, they can sometimes take away concepts you lean on. And I felt like in a lot of ways, Nix leaned on specific concepts in the passing game. Again, maybe that's going to be fine in year 2. Maybe even takes a step forward from a processing standpoint and becomes an even better player and could be a top 5 player. Don't have a conviction on this one, Jacob. It's just a feel play, and it's not somebody I'm drafting this year.
Okay, so Drake Maye is next. I had to for the brand, and just I love man. I want the upside. I want to be early on the hit, and so he's one of my favorite late round QBs. It's him and JJ McCarthy are the 2 that I hone in on in the late rounds. But you have him QB 14, just ahead of Nix, and your wariness about the offensive line factors hit me yesterday. I was legitimately, after our running back episode, thinking about moving James Conner ahead of Henderson, which, is just like so
You would never
counter to where everybody's at right now. But I do think it's a good point. Like, there are real potential problems in the foundation here, for as easy as it is to get excited about Drake Maye. But it's just tough, man. Like, again, I think it's important to like make people aware of what we're doing here, where it's like, for Superflex, I did move Drake Maye down. That's what I've got on the screen now. But for one quarterback leagues, I'm going with that upside. And so that's why I'm so high.
Right.
But for Superflex, I've got him at QB 11. I would take Purdy, Nix, Mayfield, and Dak ahead of him. So
and that's a strategy. Just to be clear to the listeners, it's like a strategy-based play by Jacob that I subscribe to as well, because in a one quarterback league, there's going to be opportunity. There's opportunity to create. If it doesn't hit with Drake Maye and he doesn't hit the ceiling that we're discussing, you can get somebody else to replace him. You can't do that in Superflex.
Yeah, you'll see like Jared Goff is up to QB 14 in the Superflex rankings, but he's QB 20 in my one QB rankings. And so like that really it's quarterback more than almost any position, because it's so deep. If you only have to start one, you're in a 12, 14 team league or whatever. I just want to try to swing for somebody who could be a top 6 guy, and rushing is so quarterback to getting that. So Fields is another one. Fields for Superflex, I have down at QB 15. And I think for one QB leagues, he's in my top 8 or 9 quarterbacks. The other thing is like, these rankings aren't representative of projections. If it was just projecting what the median would be for the quarterbacks, Jared Goff would have to be like 12 or 10 or something like that. But we would worry a little bit about him getting the kind of season that he did last year in terms of touchdowns and shootouts and all of that. We've talked about that in a number of episodes. Let's talk about Justin Fields, because I think he's interesting in this range of guys that we're talking about, the young quarterbacks, the rushing quarterbacks. So here's this thread that I mentioned earlier. You can find it's got Brock Purdy, Mayfield, Trevor Lawrence, Justin Herbert, Patrick Mahomes, Justin Fields, Kyler Murray, and Dak Prescott information. And Fields is QB 5 in fantasy points per dropback across the 2022 to 2024 season. So
Unreal.
You see, his first season was rough. He only threw for 7 touchdowns on 349 dropbacks. But since then, like, he's just been really productive for fantasy on a per opportunity basis. And so in a one quarterback league, like, it's pretty easy for me, especially I think it was on Yahoo, his ADP was like outside the top 150, or maybe that was Sleeper. In places where he's falling, in places where people are afraid to take him because the preseason has looked awful, it's pretty easy. You take him. If you want to take another quarterback with him to be safe or whatever, that's fine. But if he comes out and sucks, then you can just pick something up and stream the position. But like, there's a real chance that just through rushing, if the offense is decent, like, he's a top 5 quarterback.
So I made the case earlier that I think Brock Purdy's the best value at the position. The only one who would compete for him for me would be Justin Fields. And I've noticed what you've noticed in the auctions I've done recently, in the drafts, he just falls and falls and falls. And that's because there's been nothing but bad coming out of the preseason and camp. And Justin Fields has looked really bad so far in camp and the preseason as a passer. He also had a really nice run. And the fact of the matter is, if you're in a 4-point passing TD, you're not going to get the upside you get with Fields anywhere else really in the draft at that range. And I'll say this, like, he's an arbitrage case for Drake Maye. Drake Maye, people are loving. They're moving up the boards. People are going crazy to get him. I've seen him drafted QB 7, QB 8 in some of these drafts, off the board, I mean, at least. Fields falling and falling. It's a similar play, but Fields has more rushing upside. Now, I want to be clear, as far as Fields being the best, one of what I believe to be the best or second best value at quarterback, that's for 4-point passing TDs. If you're in a 6-point passing TD league, I do have to knock Fields a little bit, Jake, because the honest truth is, I can't see him getting above 15 passing touchdowns this year.
Yeah.
Not 15. That's a crazy number. 20.
I mean, he had 7 last year.
Yeah,
he'll play more,
15, but he could maybe hit 20 on a best case type of thing.
I think they're really going to try to run the ball. I don't think he's going to give you much passing. So I think it's mostly going to have to be the running volume. But like I said, QB 5 in fantasy points per drop back across the past 3 seasons.
And that, by the way, that's, if there's one takeaway from what you just said, Jacob, it's this. This is why Jacob and I are so massively in on these Konami code quarterbacks, the quarterbacks who run. He's done nothing with his arm, and he scored the 5th most fantasy points per dropback at the position simply because he runs. That shows you the value, especially in these leagues that are 4-point passing touchdowns, of a running quarterback. I mean, you're getting their extra points for the touchdowns, but also just the yardage. What is it? 1 point for every 25 typically, sometimes 1 for every 30 passing, 1 point for every 10 with fractional points. It's just such a massive difference.
Yeah, man, I've been hoping to find a way to like change it, to like mitigate it, make it where you don't have the Justin Fields thing where it's like he's not a good real life quarterback. And I may have found it. What I landed on was like awarding points for first down completions. And like I told you, taking away PPR entirely. So it's points per first down all across the board to try to make it more representative of real football. And I looked at the projections and I think he was like QB 14 or something like that. Okay. I think that it's kind of interesting. So I don't know. We're trying to just keep evolving as fantasy gets along. Because I think a lot of people get irritated with this, where it's like the Konami code. It's like truly a cheat code, and they don't want to draft Justin Fields. They don't want to have to draft Anthony Richardson. But it kind of, it makes sense. Like if they can stay on the field, they're going to be really productive just through rushing.
And it's not just that the reason why it's so tried and true, this formula, is because it's not that just they have the upside through the rushing and found the field. It's the floor that's built in. The rushing gives you the floor too. It's really an infallible pick based on that.
Okay, we've got our top 24 quarterbacks up on the screen, and we're going to have a few debates. And I think that will be fun. The first one I want to talk about, and I know we've gone a little bit long, but I want to spend a little bit of time here. It's Justin Herbert versus Jordan Love.
Okay.
And so Herbert came in at QB 14 for us. Jordan Love was just behind him at QB 16. Composite rankings. Trevor Lawrence was just above him. And he's interesting in this range as well.
I'm a little disappointed you're not a Lawrence guy this year with what's going on here with our boy Liam Cohen coming over there and those two talented receivers.
I sort of am, but I didn't end up with him as high as you. I've definitely got my concerns when it comes to Trevor, but we'll get to
player,
that.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a moment. Herbert versus Love. Talk me through the Herbert side, because I think it's pretty clearly Love for me.
Okay. So ultimately, when it comes down to this situation, for me at least, I like the player a lot more in Justin Herbert than Jordan Love. I have more confidence in him operating a drop back passing game on a consistent basis. Love has had hot, flat moments in his career, but he's also had struggles at times through the passing game. Also, Green Bay's defense last season, I think they were top 6. There was 6 fewest points, or top 5 in yards allowed and top 11 in points allowed. They're not, in my mind, their game script is not excellent. Now, neither is the Chargers. The Chargers are right there with them. But from an efficiency, if that's the case and both teams are going to rely on efficiency in the passing game, I prefer to lean on the Chargers' efficiency in the passing game via Justin Herbert. I also really like the weapons they've added. Trey Harris is a player that I think could be really phenomenal in the NFL. Ladd McConkey, I think, could take another step in year 2. I think Keenan Allen will provide kind of more of a solution for them on third downs they didn't have. But ultimately, it's a belief that Harbaugh will understand what he has in Justin Herbert, Jacob.
Oh, he understands what he has in Justin Herbert.
But he doesn't, though, because he still doesn't really let him throw the ball that often. So have more of a balance, or even at times pass-heavy pace. And then finally, realize what he has in him. And this is what I really meant by that, Jacob. As an actual athlete and an actual weapon in the red zone, because Justin Herbert is built very similar to Josh Allen. And there's been talk throughout his career of him having more of a role as a running quarterback. Last year we saw it. I think you may have the stats on this, but his rushing did go up slightly. But it's that red zone rushing component that I want to see mixed in for them to find solutions. We know Greg Roman can do it. He's done it with Lamar Jackson, the Ravens. He just has to commit to it and putting Herbert in those positions. If that happens, we're talking about a massive jump just from the rushing points alone. He's never going to be lighting it up. That's why I have him ranked where I have him. Like, I don't have him in the range of a Burrow. He's going to mostly rely on his passing numbers. But, man, if you can add that rushing component with the added weapons at receiver, and I believe Herbert is, generally speaking, one of the 5 best quarterbacks in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, I love him as a player for sure. What I've got here is his career through the same lens: fantasy points per dropback, touchdown rate. He really exploded on the scene with these massive fantasy seasons, 330 points his rookie season, 380 points the second season, but they were mostly fueled by massive dropback numbers too. And last year that number came down. It was at 573, which gives us back-to-back years of a low dropback number. At least at least the efficiency numbers did start to creep back up towards what we had seen before. His fantasy point per dropback rate was 0.58, which is right in line with his first 2 seasons. And so if we were to see him pass more, drop back more, I do think Herbert could, light the league on fire. He's that good. Ladd McConkey is like literally uncoverable. But I just don't know if we can expect it, maybe if they're playing from behind, but I'm worried about Slater.
Sure.
I like LaFleur more as a play caller than the Chargers play calling. Not to disparage anybody there. I think they're basically right in the middle of the pack, and LaFleur I think is good. And I like the weapons more for the Chargers, but I'm excited about Golden. I think the Packers have good weapons. So I'm looking at 2 quarterbacks, and I think Love is a very, very talented player too. For him to be as efficient as he was last year, even while playing through an injury,
True.
And everything we've seen, like his tape's really good. Maybe it's not as good as Herbert's, but I think he's very good. So we've got 2 quarterbacks who are on run-first offenses. Last year, I think of the 2, the Packers are more likely to increase their pass volume. They added a receiver in round 1. I think they're more likely to. And all of the stuff, the underlying stuff that we've been looking at today favors Love pretty substantially. 0.63 fantasy points per dropback for Love, even last year, which was a down year. And that's higher than any rate we've ever seen from Herbert in his career. Across the past few seasons, he's like top 5, top 6 in this metric. His sack per pressure rate was the second best behind only Josh Allen last year. I really think he's better than people realize and keeps getting better. He doesn't have the rushing that Herbert could. They did use Herbert a little bit, mobilized when in the red zone, even though he was playing with an injury last year. So that point, like Herbert beats him out. But the other 2 here are clearly Love over Herbert. And so that's where I'm at with him. I ended up with Love at QB 13 and Herbert at QB 16. Kyler Murray and JJ McCarthy are the 2 in between them. You have Herbert at QB 13 and Love at QB 18. So that you've got Maye, Nix, Stroud, and Caleb. Really? I never would have expected you to be higher than me on Caleb. Caleb Williams ahead of Love. Okay. I
think this kind of does. I want to touch on this because this really goes a lot into how I'm approaching the position from a strategy standpoint and overall why I don't really think it matters if I have Love at 18 or Herbert at 13 or vice versa. They're all in the same tier for me, Jacob. And ultimately speaking, I'm not prioritizing any of these players in my drafts, both super flex and 1 QB. I am letting the draft fall to me, and I'm taking the best value of them. I do not see them with my tier. I have a massive tier this year of quarterbacks that starts with Baker and Fields, but I'll put them in a little bit of a tier 2A maybe. But from Dak Prescott down through Jared Goff, that's 10 quarterbacks. I don't see much of a difference. So for me, I'm simply just taking the best value and I'm letting the draft board fall to me. Sure, I may have a little, if it's, push came to shove and both were on the board, tiebreaker, maybe I'll take a Herbert over a Jordan Love, but that's not how I'm playing the position at all. So I just want to make that clear. Like, have the distinction in the rankings is not the distinction at all in my strategy. Now I do see a drop off, like to get to that next tier of JJ McCarthy, for me at least, to Bryce Young, Stafford, into those guys. I don't really want that. I see the drop off there, but for me, like the difference between those players, I just group them all together and just tiebreakers, but I'm letting the draft fall to me how it plays out.
Okay. Let's talk about Caleb. We both got Caleb a little bit lower than these guys. He's QB 18 for me, QB 17 for you. I want to talk about him and Trevor Lawrence comparatively, both getting new play callers that are hoping to fix them. And then I want to talk about Kyler Murray, because to me, they're sort of similar bets. In fact, I've been considering pushing Lawrence ahead of Murray. I have Lawrence at QB 17, Murray at QB 15. You have Lawrence at QB 12 and Murray at QB 11. So relatively high compared to me on both of them. And you see them kind of how I do, where they're kind of similar. First, I'm going to talk about Murray, and then we'll talk about the two problem childs there with Caleb and T-Law. So Murray really has just had 2 seasons where he's been phenomenal for fantasy. It was year 2 and year 3 back in 2020 and 2021. His fantasy point per dropback number was way higher. His design rush number was way higher. That number has dropped off a lot over the past 3 years. They haven't used him as much as a rusher, and his fantasy point per dropback number has dropped as a result. So 0.69 in year 2, 0.64 in year 3. All the other years, it's between 0.52 and 0.56, which is where he was at last year, 0.56. Touchdown rate, same thing, below 4% each of the past 3 years. Why does Trey McBride not score touchdowns? This is probably contributing to it. What really helped him like push into such a huge fantasy season last year was, one, he played 17 games, which over the past 3 seasons, he's missed, like 40% of his games before that. But he played a full 17 games last year, and he got to 611 dropbacks, which is a high number. I worry when it comes to Kyler, and even a little bit when it comes to McBride, that we're going to see a lot less passing. The Cardinals really honed in on defense this offseason. That's what basically all their offseason acquisitions were. And I think that we might see them really try to lean into the run game using both Benson and Connor. And so Murray was QB 13 in fantasy points per dropback last year. That's basically right where I have him in my rankings. You're a little bit higher at QB 11, but I think basically I consider maybe even a little bit below consensus. What do you think about that case for Arizona potentially passing less?
It's a strong case, especially when I look at how easy their schedule is, which is part of why I've propped up Kyler Murray in my rankings. I actually think it's going to benefit him more so than hurt him, because it's going to be easier situations for them to score in, and they'll score more points. And that's really the big boost for me. I mean, I think there's 2 teams that really stand out to me from a schedule standpoint, and they're in the same division, the 49ers and the Cardinals. You look at that slate of games, man, and it's just beautiful looking. We'll be heading into those weeks on a weekly matchup basis when we do our podcast during the season. Like, we got defense X again. Like, how could we miss here? I feel like that will be the case for the Cardinals offense. I see a big jump coming for them, even though I'm not a huge believer in Kyler. I think the way they run an offense, it will work very well given the slate of games they play. So with more scoring, I expect him to score more points as well. Now, he has said like he doesn't want to run at times. Like, that has come down. All those, like, there is a negative case to be made for him there. It's the ranking I certainly feel the least comfortable about, Jacob. But again, he's in this glut of players for me. So, like, sure, he might be 11 for me, and Love might be 18, or Caleb might be 17. It's not enough of a difference that I would ever take Kyler Murray with all those quarterbacks on the board. If he's the one that falls in that draft, he'll be on my team.
All right, so let's talk about Trevor and Caleb. On Trevor Lawrence, I've got some interesting information here related to Baker Mayfield and Trevor and their comparison. So here's Baker. We saw his fantasy point per dropback number spike to 0.69 last year. He had 41 touchdowns, 7.2% touchdown rate. Here's Trevor, and the year before he joins Liam Cohen, he averaged 0.53 fantasy points per dropback. That's Trevor. Baker's number was 0.52 the year before Liam Cohen got there. So very similar. The only real thing that's like dragging Lawrence's numbers way down is this rookie season where he had only 12 touchdowns on 664 dropbacks. So that really just like torpedoes his efficiency numbers throughout his career, which I think is important to bring up because at previous points in this podcast, we've compared him to some of the low range guys that have, through an initial, 60 games or whatever Trevor's played. And it looks really, really bad, really, really scary. But the last few seasons haven't been bad. I mean, if you were paying attention during the Mahomes conversation, his fantasy point per dropback number is like right in that 0.55 range.
Right.
And that's where Trevor's been. 2022, year 2, 0.55. Year 3, 0.48. Year 4, 0.53 in terms of fantasy points per dropback. His passing touchdown rate has been right around 4% with fine weapons, but not really great weapons and not great coaching. Things could be a lot better this year. But year 2, BTJ, Travis Hunter, and we're very, very excited about Liam Cohen. And so if these are the baselines, it's not that bad, and it could improve. He's basically right at league average. He's like right below Kyler Murray in the same range as Mahomes. What if that does improve in a substantial way like we saw for Baker Mayfield? And that's, I think, what our boy Dan is betting on here. QB 12 for Trevor Lawrence. Am I way too low?
You're not way too low. Again, I feel like these quarterbacks are very similar to me. I just believe in Lawrence above the rest of these guys, and clearly above you, because I see a breakout coming for him. And to me, it's a bet on a few things that you've gone over. One, and I'll just simplify it. One, it's a bet on the guy who had Baker Mayfield throwing for 4,145. Two, it's a bet on who has 2 better weapons in the passing game than Trevor Lawrence. You can think of a very short list of players there, Jacob. And obviously that's a big projection, but the film speaks to like film speaks for itself. Go watch Travis Hunter last year. He was by far and away, in my opinion, the best route running receiver in the NFL, the best overall receiver, in that rookie class. So I'm betting on the talent, I'm betting on the coaching, and I'm betting on what that means for fantasy. And we've gone over that in past episodes. And then for me, the last part of that bet is just, can Trevor Lawrence improve at all? And I think he can with better coaching, man. Like, I just think there's different coaches in the NFL and they have a different way of approaching thing. The Doug Peterson way of approaching thing, it didn't fit for Trevor Lawrence. I think he kind of does need someone to simplify this thing, simplify the reads, have it be of more 1, 2, 3 with the reads, like get through it, get to there, and get the ball in space to these players to open, not only space to these players, but on those in breakers, as you've talked about with BTJ, to open up the rest of the passing game. So I just think it all comes into play this season, and it all improves for Lawrence and makes his job a lot easier.
Yeah, I think I am going to move him up. I think I've just been nervous about it because the offensive line is the main thing.
Yep, and that's fair.
But there's upside that he might run more. That's something that really changed with Baker under Lee McCollum as well. And then all the rates, like I hit on earlier, could improve as well. So I'm fine with it. I think I've like purposely tried to not let myself be too aggressive with it, because in the past I've done that, where it's like, this is gonna hit it, like all lines up, it's clearly gonna hit, and you just get obsessed with the upside case. And I didn't want to do that, especially when it came to like drafting a quarterback. And I like a lot of JJ McCarthy and some of these other cheap quarterbacks. So let's keep the conversation moving so we can get to some of them quickly here on Caleb Williams. QB 17 for you, QB 18. The chat, nobody's really taking Caleb's side here. We've got choose your quarterback between these three: Trevor Lawrence, Kyler Murray, Caleb. 13% of the votes coming in for Caleb. Can you make any case? It's tough. It's very tough if you've watched the film. Man, it was so brutal. All the accuracy rates last year were at the very, very bottom of the league.
Yeah, the 2024 film is terrible. Obviously, the preseason or the buzz in the preseason and summer was bad until kind of their preseason game where he looked pretty good, I thought, out there. The bet on Caleb is a bet on my belief in what I scouted when I watched his tape and film going into the NFL draft. Unbelievably quick release, Aaron Rodgers level release. And what does that mean? Well, what it means is if he could time things out right, Jacob, and he could start to process this game and the game will slow down for him and he has a more confident where to go with the football, that release eliminates the time for the defensive backs to break on the football and get themselves in that window to break up a pass. It's why Aaron Rodgers has been so successful. But it's not just a quick release. It's accuracy on the release. It's the velocity of that after the throw. And it's the ability to make throws from all different arm angles, all different areas of the field, red zone, outside of structure, when he forced to break the pocket. He has elite arm talent, Caleb Williams. He also has an ability to run the football. And it's just matching that all, similar to my Jacksonville case for Trevor Lawrence, matching that all with the right coach to put him in the right position and help simplify the game for him. Because I don't doubt his talent at all. I think he was thinking a lot last year with Shane Waldron. And even seen it at times in the preseason, right? In these joint practices, he's thinking a lot. He has to just get it to slow down for him and stop thinking about it. And I think Ben Johnson does a really good job of that, Jacob. Like if we look at Jared Goff before and after Ben Johnson, the end of that McVay run, it wasn't pretty, dude. Like he was thinking too much. And Ben Johnson really simplifies what a quarterback has to do in a lot of ways. And I think that's going to help Caleb Williams unlock his potential and his upside. And then in addition to all that, it's just massive amounts of weapons. Rome Odunze, DJ Moore, Luther Burden, Colston Loveland. I mean, that's as good as it gets. 2 major additions on the offensive line to shore up the interior offensive line. That's where he really struggled the most, I thought, when there was pressure up the middle. So just a lot of good things working in his favor. He has to take the step forward, though.
I think the coaching point cannot be overstated. There really were not answers there for Caleb last year. I just hope that there's not too much trauma, man. Because he still looks spooked. Like I watched him against the Chiefs, and it's like, to be fair, he's going into Arrowhead against the Chiefs defense, and he's got Hardo Ben Johnson on his butt, but like, dude, he just looks spooked. He's like, it's all falling apart. And it's like, no, you're fine. The pocket's legitimately clean. Oh, brother.
And that could derail a whole quarterback's career, to be quite frank. Like for a while, it's what ruined Sam Darnold. Now, obviously, we've seen Kevin O'Connell did a really good. I guess I'm not going to just credit Kevin O'Connell, Kyle Shanahan first, and then Kevin O'Connell did a really good job kind of getting him through that. But that's kind of the case. It unlocks an interesting point for me, though, Jacob. That's kind of the same case I made in the case I have for Caleb, right? Like, what did they do to unlock Sam Darnold? they had him going through their version of how to work a progression as a quarterback. And their version of how to work a progression of quarterback is so different than anything that Sam Darnold had been in before that. And it's play action based, right? It's based on designs in the run game, but it's also just hit your back foot and hit your first read a lot of the time. And they're just doing a good job of getting those first reads open, in my opinion. Ben Johnson, Shanahan, McVay, they do a great job of that, finding a way to scheme open that first read. And I think that may be the case for Caleb Williams.
For sure. Yeah. I made a tweet earlier about Caleb this offseason, and it's just his splits with and without play action. Even last year, say what you want about the coaching, it wasn't Ben Johnson, who has been the most efficient play action creator in the NFL over the past 3 years. Caleb was much better with play action. He got rid of the ball faster. He trusted the design more, and everything benefited. Was more productive on a per dropback basis, was more accurate, fewer turnover-worthy plays and off-target throws and all of that. With Ben Johnson bringing in this heavy play action emphasis, I think that could be really good for him. But still, we are starting at the absolute bottom here in terms of all these things we talked about. Only Will Levis had a worse sack to pressure rate than Caleb last year. You'll see Baker Mayfield is right here with him, so it's somewhat a stylistic stat. It doesn't, not every single player is going to adhere perfectly to the general rule about what this stat means. But none of these stats are any good. 26th in fantasy points per dropback. He's got to be much better. We'll see. It is important to bring this up. Yeah. People sometimes point towards the season long numbers, and it's like he had 700 dropbacks last year. That really inflated things on a per dropback basis. He was not good.
Yeah, you're not wrong. I mean, if you're basing it on last season, it's going to be ugly. But Caleb, hopefully, he can overcome that. I think Ben Johnson's the guy to get him there.
Yeah, he's third for me out of this group.
Sure.
But there is a chance. I haven't been willing to bet on it. Okay, the only guys we missed a few here as we're going along: Baker Mayfield and Dak Prescott. Easy ones to miss, classic, just vets. They're both discussed in this thread, so I'll just quickly look at those two. Baker Mayfield, we've got here, of course, the infamous list. These are the quarterbacks who have thrown for 40 or more touchdowns in a season. It's basically all Hall of Famers, and then Baker Mayfield and Andrew Luck. I think it's really unlikely we see what we saw last year repeat, and it's possible that it could come regressing down in a big way. So I'm not drafting Baker, even though I love the guy as a player. I just haven't landed him anywhere. And then Dak, I think he maybe has the biggest takeaway of anybody in this thread. Look at Dak's numbers every year except for last year. Above 0.54 fantasy points per dropback, 5 seasons above 0.6. Last year was at 0.45. Wow. Touchdown rate at 3.8%.
Now you give him George Pickens.
Yeah. It's such an easy, obvious pick to bounce back in a huge way here. The offense has
unfortunately he's being priced at that point though. People are drafting him.
Yeah, but there are drafts where he just falls. It's kind of like Purdy,
One QB drafts, there's always somebody who falls. It's just the point of why I don't really like one QB format that much.
Yeah. I think the volume is going to be huge this year. So he's always been this really, really high producer on a per dropback basis. And I think we might see 600-700 dropbacks this year because who's going to run the ball for this team?
Yeah, that's the point. Who's going to run the ball? But also not just that, and it's just a rumor, but if they do trade Micah Parsons to the Packers, who's going to stop the pass? And they don't have, first of all, they have a terrible run defense, Dallas. They have not improved the interior. They drafted 2 guys high on the interior defensive line. One is a good pass rusher, Odigizua. The other, Mozzie Smith's been an absolute disaster for them. They have no resources to replace the interior run defense. Then in the passing game, their secondary is completely beat up. They rely almost entirely on their pass rush. And if Parsons is not part of that pass rush, this could be low-key one of the worst defenses in the NFL, which is amazing for fantasy purposes, for the shootout potential for Dak. If Dallas cannot efficiently run the ball and they're playing in shootouts, Dak Prescott is going to be what Joe Burrow was last year, potentially. I mean, he's not as good a quarterback. Let me make that clear. He won't be that level, but he'll be a light version of that.
Yeah, it's a similar equation. If you look at, he's had 3 seasons where his dropback number has pushed above 625, and he's had 337, 320, 342 fantasy points in those seasons. That's top 5, top 6 QB numbers. I think that definitely could be what we get this year. And that's why the fantasy point per dropback number is important, is like if he does spike in volume, like we're kind of talking about all the team level stuff could affect that kind of a change, then all of a sudden he is a value, even at QB9 ADP or whatever. Like I absolutely think he could be pushing into that Burrow Mahomes range if he stays healthy and the receivers stay healthy. Could just be huge numbers.
Yep. Totally with you on that.
Okay. So I think we've covered basically everybody in the top 20-ish now. We did Love. Okay. JJ McCarthy. I want to hear why you're a little bit low on McCarthy. I've got him at QB 14. I think there's rushing upside. Sam Darnold last year was QB 8 or 9 in fantasy points per dropback without any rushing. I think it could just be like kind of like the Bo Nix season last year, where like great coaching and rushing results in like a really efficient per dropback player. And I think most people liked his profile more than Nix, or at least they were similar, you know? So why can't he have that kind of a year? What do you think on McCarthy?
All great takes by you and a good case to be made. For me, the negative case for McCarthy is year off, year removed with the injury. Don't love that for his profile. Didn't play all that much before that. Didn't operate anything close to resembling a Kevin O'Connell offense at Michigan. And so one, is Kevin O'Connell going to try to put him in the offense that Sam Darnold thrived in, right? And that Kirk Cousins thrived in from a fantasy standpoint? Or is he going to try to alter the offense, Jacob, to look like more of something he thinks he can win with McCarthy? If he alters that offense, I almost throw out everything we've seen from Darnold and Cousins over the years, because the offense will take a totally different shape and form. And they've already shown some signs of wanting to do that with their additions on the interior offensive line in the run game and Jordan Mason in the run game. If we do get to less O'Connell ball for fantasy than we're used to, or a different version of it, what does that mean for McCarthy? One, he's going to have to be hyper efficient, or the running will have to be there. I think the running will be there. That's part of the profile I do like with McCarthy. He's just outside that tier for me because I see rushing upside. But from a passing standpoint, Jacob, if he is relying more on efficiency, I need to see it before I believe it. Because at Michigan, I watched a lot of his tape because the Giants were interested in him. I wasn't a big fan of his tape from passing standpoint. I thought he threw with great velocity on the intermediate and short passes, which could factor in well because we know that O'Connell likes to take advantage of the deep digs and that intermediate area of the field. But he struggled when throwing to his left. He struggled with accuracy and ball placement. Over the top, he really struggled. That was where it really showed up, I thought, on tape with his deep throws. He didn't look to me like a quarterback ready to play in the NFL when I saw him. He looked like a developmental quarterback. Since then, he's missed a whole season with an injury, didn't get any reps, and has had what most described as not a great camp so far for the Vikings. So to me, it's just a ton of projection on the player. And I just can personally see, in my mind at least, more chance with him than any of these other quarterbacks, including Caleb, including Lawrence, of us looking at it one of these offenses that, oh man, we get to the season and yeah, they had O'Connell. Yeah, they had all the pieces in place, but somehow they're bottom 10 in scoring and total offense.
Yeah, I think those are pretty good points. Like you probably don't want to find yourself in a position where it's just Darnold or McCarthy as your only quarterback in a league where you don't feel good about the waiver wire options, because there is downside risk for all the reasons Dan alluded to there. I'm comfortable betting on it just because I believe in Kelce and the system so much. And the fact that we saw Darnold get to this QB9 rate, even with just 16 designed rushes. And I've heard a lot of good things about McCarthy this summer too. I feel like I'm not
been
sure.
Like up and down, but it hasn't been great.
Yeah. All right. The last guy I want to mention here, and then we'll just kind of wrap up with our the bottom of our quarterback rankings, is Goff. If you want to take Goff in the range that he goes, I think that's totally valid because, like I said, at the top, there's 6 quarterbacks who are above league average in both sack to pressure ratio and fantasy point per dropback. And those are really highly correlated and predictive stats when it comes to next season fantasy scoring. And Goff is one of those 6. He was really, really good last year. Of course, we're worried about a lot of the team level stuff, but on paper, rock solid pick. And again, I'll show you my Superflex rankings here. QB 14. So don't let us scare you off and make you think that Goff is a bad pick because we have him at QB 20. I have him above like basically all the guys we just talked about for Superflex.
And he's in my tier. He's in that tier, that bulk tier. He's just so again, he's my 19, but I see him very interchangeably with 11. After Dak, I see it very interchangeable, and then Dak's my QB 10.
So we do have Stroud ahead of him. He's the only guy from this range we haven't hit on. Do you want
Yeah.
to mention anything on Stroud?
I've touched on Stroud on past podcasts, so I
Yeah.
don't need to go too much further on him. Just really like the profile. Great talent quarterback, one of the best throwers of the football in the league, and only played, I think it was 66 total snaps last year with all three of his top receivers on the field. They've got Jaden Higgins in there now, Jalen Noel, who I like, and obviously Christian Kirk, who's a player who fits that system well, in my opinion.
All right, beyond those guys, we get into the Tua Tagovailoa range. Bryce Young, people are asking, where's Bryce Young? Because he's a beyond the box score staple. We love Bryce.
True.
Dan came in higher than me, 22. I've got him at 23. I just think for fantasy, it's going to be tough for him to get there. He had an outlier number of scrambling touchdowns last year, and that kind of boosted his fantasy production down the stretch. I'm totally fine taking Bryce in a super flex league, but some of these metrics don't look great as it pertains to Bryce. Sack to pressure ratio did get a lot better last year, but still wasn't great. Bryce is kind of like the use case, the recent use case, at least for like how Caleb Williams could maybe get there, even though some of these stats look really, really bad. That's where Bryce was after his rookie season, like literally the worst pressure to sack ratio in the league. But it did get a lot better. So I'm bullish on Bryce, but I don't know if he's going to be a high scoring fantasy quarterback.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think that's why I have him ranked where I have him.
He and Stafford are identical in our ranks here in Composite. Just flipped one spot.
Different profiles, though, right? Like Stafford to me gets a knock in the rankings because of the potential for an injury. I think if Stafford's on the field, dude, he could end up being like a surprise top 12 fantasy scorer with these. Devontae Adams is such a good fit for his skill set.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's like I don't want to draft Stafford, but I did put him ahead of Bryce.
Yeah,
and was thinking about moving him even higher because again, these are 1 QB rankings. We're looking for upside.
And then we get to sorry, go ahead.
Geno Smith, we've got next. That's somebody who I moved up in Superflex rankings. I feel really solid about his projection. I think there could be upside beyond that, and he doesn't like have anything that scares me like Matthew Stafford or Bryce if things collapse, or Penix if things collapse with Mitch McGarry. Did you have something you wanted to add on Geno?
Just Geno, I love him as a quarterback on film. He's so good. The reason I can't rank him higher is just it's a Pete Carroll offense. I don't think there's going to be heavy volume, and I think they're looking to win game 17-14, and he doesn't run. So for that, it's just hard to put him above the guys ahead of him.
That could be the formula. They've, I think, got good coaching there. Obviously, top down, Pete Carroll, good defensive coordinator. But man, their defensive talent is lacking.
That's a good prop point. Their defensive talent sucks.
Big way, and they're playing in a division that has a lot of talented offensive pieces. I look at their schedule, and there could be some shootouts early on. And if it just gets rolling like that and Geno is playing well, like I think that we could see it be a different version of what we've seen in the past for Pete Carroll. But I do think you're probably right.
I like that point.
That's probably the way they want to play. Yeah. Sam Darnold, Michael Penix, Cam Ward, next up for us, Daniel Jones, Russell Wilson, and Aaron Rodgers. Like I said, they're lower in my composite rankings because I want to take more shots on upside. Do you have any feel on Jackson Dart? Is he somebody that you would stash in a league where you could?
Yeah, I would for Superflex leagues. He's worth a stash. The question just becomes like how long, you need deep benches for it. Obviously, you need to have the ability to stash a quarterback. Like for example, in my Superflex league, Jacob, I'm stashing Anthony Richardson right now in my home league because he was cheap in the auction, and I see the massive upside if he ever gets on the field. It's a waste of a roster spot, though, and it gives you challenges to build your roster out that way. So there's pros and cons to that, but Dart will definitely be a good fantasy fit. Look at what Brian Dable has done with Daniel Jones from a fantasy standpoint in 2022. He'll run a lot of up-tempo and no huddle with Jackson Dart, lean on the things that worked at Ole Miss. He runs Jackson Dart. He'll be an excellent fantasy quarterback if he gets a chance. But it's a question of when. And I think, one quarterback I wanted to talk about, the one I wanted to stand by, the one I wanted to pinpoint of this group was Darnold, because I'm definitely a little bit more scared. And I didn't make the change in the rankings before today's show, but I kind of want to move Darnold down at least 2 or 3 spots. Hearing what McDonald's saying about Jalen Milroe having design packages, like if that Milroe stuff works, and it probably will, it's going to work best in the red zone. That's where you really take advantage of a talent like Milroe. If he becomes like their red zone quarterback, or at least is mixing in a decent amount in the red zone, it's a death blow for Sam Darnold's fantasy value.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm not drafting Darnold anywhere, but I'm fine to move him down behind these guys. We'll see how that plays out. I think Milroe is a great stash too. I thought it was interesting that you had Richardson above Dart. I have Dart and then Anthony Richardson and then Milroe if I'm stashing.
Yeah, Richardson definitely above Dart for me.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. He's like QB7 in fantasy points per dropback since
Right.
entering the league. I just think there's a much higher chance that Dart plays than him. But we'll see how that
Oh,
goes.
that's an interesting point. You think that's funny. That I think you might be the only one who thinks that, probably. Like I guess, or maybe you're not the only one who thinks that. Maybe I'm just wrong in my assessment of it. I think Daniel Jones is going to be so bad that he's going to have to be benched pretty soon.
Yeah. That's why I wanted to ask you about Dart and Richardson here is like you have Daniel Jones experience, and then you obviously have Giants experience here with what's going on in the preseason with Russell Wilson and Dart. It seems to me like with such a brutal schedule to start out for the Giants that it's inevitable that Dart will be in there before too long.
It is if Russell will, if they're losing games, Jacob, that they're in and they're competing, but they just, we lost by a field goal or one possession of the Chiefs. They're not going to bench Russ if he's playing well. That's kind of my thought on that. And maybe it's hopium, maybe it's being too close to the situation. I just feel like there's a much better chance Russell Wilson can be a successful quarterback than Daniel Jones, despite the Colts having a better situation. I mean, you look at some of the numbers, it's not just hopium. You look at some of the numbers career-wise for Jones, it's unbelievable how bad he's been from a stats and advanced stats standpoint. It's bottom 3 across the board all the way with the exception of 2022.
The last guy I want to hit on from this range is Joe Flacco. I think if you're just looking for a quarterback to start at the beginning of the year in a deep league or in a super flex league, he's got the Bengals week 1 and some games where it's like we could get the Joe Flacco of old where we're passing all of the time because the Browns are playing from behind. Whereas a lot of these other quarterbacks that are low have some pretty brutal games to start out. Like Cam Ward gets the Broncos on the road in week 1, brutal, like we just mentioned, brutal start for Russell Wilson. Aaron Rodgers has the Jets and then the Seahawks. Those could be good defenses. I think Flacco is not somebody that I have ranked very high because, again, these are for one quarterback leagues. But in some circumstances, he's somebody I would be looking to get at the end of the draft. I think he could put up – it wouldn't surprise me if Flacco's like QB 8 in week 1 and like across the first month is like QB 18 or 16 or something like that,
I'm with that. I think that Flacco's, thrown for over 4,000 in over his last 17 starts. Processes defense is better than basically more than half the NFL quarterbacks. Has a better arm talent than more than half the NFL quarterbacks starting, I feel like, today. So I'm with this for sure. The interesting thing is if you're really going cheap at Superflex, I feel like he's the guy to target at the end of your drafts. The problem is longevity with him. Like when the Browns ultimately lose the games they're going to lose, do they just this type of franchise, I feel like, is quicker to pull the trigger on turning it over to a rookie.
Yeah. And you could make it an emphasis to get Dylan Gabriel or whatever, but we don't even necessarily know that it would be him.
It would be him, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So it is a bit.
And I don't think I would want Gabriel ever in fantasy.
Wow. Harsh words from Dan Schneider. I think we'll wrap our QB show there. Sorry.
Those are the games, dude, where in Superflex leagues, we're like, well, I guess I'll play this guy. He's starting. And then he gets 6.4 points. And you're like, I had a flex. That's a PPR league. I could have just gone with this guy. He's going to get 6 catches. But no, you went with the quarterback who throws for 190 and 1 TD. But yeah, anyway, this is going to do a wrap for the quarterbacks. We're going to move to the tight ends. This went a lot longer than we expected to go.
In the chat, still have tight ends to get through. We need the Loveland propaganda.
I haven't even talked auction, salary cap, listener code.
We haven't talked about quarterbacks literally at all this offseason, other than being like Jake Maye, JJ McCarthy. We like those guys, So we needed to take time here. There are people who play in Superflex and deeper leagues. We need to do it.
It's a good show, hopefully, for the Superflex listeners. And look, BTB is a long show. It is what it is, especially these live ones. We have fun with it. And we talk. This is actually a great point as we transition to tight ends. Just to remember, please, if you're enjoying the show, hit the like button. Just do it for me. Hit it. Hover that hand over the mouse. It's all I'll ever ask. Click the like button. Oh, I lied. It's not all I'll ever ask. Also, subscribe and rate the show on Spotify and iTunes. We need those. Help us grow. But now, without further ado, Jacob, it's time. You know what? Let's take a break. Before we get into tight ends, let's take a break. Let's take a quick break to hear a word from our sponsors.
Get ready.
Wait a second. I thought we were going tubing.
All 3 Sonic the Hedgehog movies and Knuckles are now streaming on Paramount Plus.
And everyone loves it.
Every adventure.
Just try to keep up.
Every face-off.
This ends now.
And every moment that will have you saying,
where have you been? My entire life!
It's showtime!
All 3 Sonic the Hedgehog movies and the entire Sonic universe are now streaming on Paramount.
I wasn't ready to die.
The wait is over.
I need to know what happened.
Discover the mystery everyone's been talking about. cool spirits. Every episode of all seasons now streaming on Paramount.
Critics agree, Landman is a hit.
We roll the dice one last time.
Men die. Oil companies don't.
Here we go. The 2025 CBS Sports NFL schedule is here. 18 glorious Sundays.
He's got his receiver touchdown.
Filled with rematches.
Oh, the play of the year.
And rivalries.
Touchdown, Bengals.
Plus, plenty of superstar showdowns. And an epic matchup between the Chiefs and Cowboys on Thanksgiving. Clear your Sundays beginning September 7th for the NFL on CBS and Paramount Plus.
All right, Jacob, it's time. Let's talk tight ends. We get to discuss our boy. We're probably gonna be brief on that one, but a lot of tight ends, interesting position. I feel, from doing all the auctions I've done and the salary cap drafts I've done, this is a position where a lot of people don't like to build out in salary cap. They're more likely to take a tight end earlier in snake drafts. But for me, it's as it's always been. I'm willing to take some of the elite guys here at the position, the two I believe. After that, I am never taking a tight end in rounds 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 range. So where are you at with tight ends? Where do we start? What would want to maybe touch on the top of the board?
I think this will be a lot quicker conversation. We've talked about the tight ends. We've talked about the tight ends at length, and I don't have parameters to set here with like 3 kind of obscure stats that I need to introduce and all of that. So I'm looking forward to it. I think we can get through this quick and then get to some fun auction discussions at the end. But yeah, at the top, I want to point people to a conversation that I just had with Ryan Heath on the Fantasy Points Data's channel. It's only on YouTube. If you search Jake Gibbs, Ryan Heath, Brock Bowers, you'll find it. The title is ADP Debates and Data-Driven Draft Targets. I wasn't, trying to come in and just dumpster Ryan in front of his home crowd, so I let him off kind of easy. But I really think that a lot of the discourse around Bowers is wrong. Like, I think looking at previous tight end seasons is probably wrong. Probably not all that relevant when it comes to Bowers, who I think is maybe the most special talent we've ever seen at tight end. And I also think that using his per game production is probably not right. Like, it was a rookie season where defenses knew that 100% he was the only threat to beat you. Like, the worst run game in the NFL, nothing else beyond Jacoby Myers in the pass game, no quarterback to threaten with a deep ball. I just don't think that his per game metrics are that relevant, really. Will Dissly averaged more yards after the catch per reception than Bowers last year. Bowers was tied with K. Dotton in yak per reception. He was barely above league average. He scored 7 touchdowns. There's so much upside available to him if the offense is functional in 2025. Like, he got there last year through like PPR scamming his way there. It was like Wan'Dale Robinson bullcrap is how Brock Bowers scored points. That's ridiculous. Like, we know he's so much more talented than that. I don't know. Like, the Raiders looked okay in total offensive production because of that. And so it's like, are they going to be way better than, 15th or 13th or whatever they were last year? Like, it's not so much that. It's just that the way where he could score his points are more valuable, more high upside types of targets, like down the field targets and more red zone, end zone looks if Geno is able to score more points. And I think this version of the Raiders just feels like way more ambitious. Like you alluded to, they might want to really lean on the ground game, and that could be the crux of like what like sinks Bowers here and why Kelce was like truly an outlier is it was like elite efficiency plus awesome volume, the Chiefs being in shootouts and stuff like that. And Mahomes, we covered the per dropback stuff earlier with Mahomes, like just ridiculous times there. Maybe if the Raiders are able to have their way and just really try to run, we don't get there. But I do think they could be in shootouts. So I just wanted to mention, like, Brock Bowers, I don't want to push him too high. I've got him 15th overall for PPR. And so, like, in that range, I'm comfortable with him. I'm taking him over Devon Achane, but I'm not taking him over Brian Thomas Jr., that kind of thing. That's where I'm at with Bowers. We talked about Trey McBride already. We've talked about him a lot. He's one of our favorite tight ends. And like we talked about with the Kyler Murray thing, if they throw less, that could really hurt McBride. If Marvin Harrison Jr. takes a bigger role, that could hurt McBride. So to me, there is a distinction between the two. The more that we've dug into the, league winning stuff and really wanting to find wide receivers and running backs that could be league winners, McBride is the one that's been pushed down more so than Bowers. Is that where you're at?
It's exactly where I'm at, though. I do think they're both excellent value picks. And I think a lot of the time, specifically in these auction formats, we'll get to this a little bit more later, you can get them at discounted prices because people don't want to build out their rosters by spending at tight end. It makes things a lot more difficult that way from a budgeting standpoint. I would also note that on the Bowers front, like just like my Jaden Daniels case, Jacob, it's the same one. He is an outlier player. Let's not use historical data. Let's understand this was a generational prospect who hit the ground running and immediately looked like one of the best players, if not the best player in his position. The last time this happened was Jamar Chase. Did Jamar Chase have a drop off after his rookie season? No, he got better, I think, if I remember correctly, or he stayed around the same level production. Now with a much better quarterback play, more red zone opportunities, and like you said, potential for a broken defense there in Vegas against teams where they're going to have to play hard, play in potential shootouts. There's a lot of upside here.
Yeah. I think I hope Ryan sees this and knows that it's all love. I do want to push back a little bit and have some fun, like be a little more contentious. The case would be like, when it comes to him being such a special player, that's how you feel about Malik Neighbors too, right?
Sure.
And like Brian Thomas Jr.
But I'm high on both of those players.
I know.
Yeah.
That's why Bowers isn't like, we did our best values at ADP and we were shocked at where we could land Bowers. And I think like that's a big reason for it is like he's just getting pushed down by proxy, like compared to some of these other really awesome players. And we do have those guys above him. Where's he at for you overall?
Let's take a quick look at that and see where he's at for me overall. I think I just have my Superflex top 50, the top 250. I'm gonna have to get back to you on that. I did this earlier today and I forgot because I wanted to do it for the auction side of it to show where he went in that. I know where he went overall out of all the non-quarterbacks in that, which we'll get to later. But give me a second and I'll come back to this.
By the way, Jamar Chase, 18 points per game year one, 20 points per game in year two. There you go, Dan.
There we go.
Okay, so George Kittle is tight end 3, pretty much consensus at the top. I do think he's fine in the third round if you don't have a slam dunk pick there that you love. I think, man, the more that we get closer to the season here with the 49ers, it seems like it's got to just funnel through 2 or 3 players, with it being Christian McCaffrey, Kittle, and Ricky Pearsall. They never really expand his role that much in terms of routes run. So I don't know that that's going to change. And it's hard to really imagine that he could be more efficient on a per route basis than he's been, because he's been like the god of per route efficiency his whole career, including last year where it was like peak levels of efficiency. But with Deebo Samuel off the field, his splits have always been better. His targets have been higher on a per route basis. So there's a lot of reasons to be really excited about Kittle. It could be a huge, huge season. Wouldn't surprise me at all if he was tight end 1 in fantasy. Like that could happen if we get like the bear case for Brock Bowers and Trey McBride based off some of the stuff we talked about with their offenses wanting to be more run heavy. So I'm fine taking him at ADP. I think, Dan, you prefer to wait at the position is where you're at.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm going to take any player outside of McBride and Bowers, instead of just waiting and getting Colston Loveland at the end of every draft, because you can, or Kincaid and some of my other guys I like there, it's going to be Kittle. And the case for Kittle is the target upside with the injuries at receiver for 49ers and the jump I expect from their passing game. But the negative case, and the reason I just haven't done it as much, despite the price being so cheap, is 1, I either already bought Brock Bowers in my auctions, or 2, and that's happened most of the time, or 2, I still just don't love the age injury profile there for Kittle, especially for a tight end like Kittle. Like you look at a player like Bowers, look at a player on this list like Loveland to an extent, Kelce for sure, Andrews. A lot of these players are just running routes at the tight end position. George Kittle is the most physical tight end in the NFL. He's been described by some coaches as a 6th offensive lineman. That puts his body at so much more risk of getting injured when he's actually being used as like a blocking tight end.
For sure. All right, you guys ready for Dan's tight end 4? This one is spicy. Travis Kelce.
Yep.
Travis Kelce at tight end 4 ahead
it's
of
not spicy. You consider it spicy. You've given up on Kelce, and you will regret that.
Okay. I mean, I do think almost everyone's drafting Laporta over him, so I do think it is spicy.
Yeah. But isn't he like tight end 5?
Something like that. Yeah, I think he's basically
so it's not that
5,
spicy.
Yeah. I think it's like him and Hawkinson
spicy.
in the same range. Andrews sneaks up into that range, and then Tyler Warren is getting steamed up in some drafts and goes ahead of him. But tight end 4, it's basically just a huge bet on touchdowns, right?
Yeah. For Kelce, it's a bet on touchdowns, a bet on him getting back in shape, which it looks like he has. He lost 15 pounds this offseason, which is definitely notable. And it's a bet on their connection, the rapport with Mahomes and Kelce. That's something that none of these players have at this position besides maybe McBride and Kyler can kind of compete in that regard. Chiefs offense scoring more touchdowns, Chiefs offense getting more efficient. All of those things I think will work for Kelce. And by the way, when I say bet on touchdowns, Jacob, it's because that's all you really need to do at this position to finish in the top 6. You just need to score touchdowns and you'll be a top 6 player.
Yeah, well, I've got my sights set a little bit higher here, okay? I want more than top 6. I want Tyler Warren over Travis Kelce. I want Colston Loveland over Travis Kelce. I want Tucker Kraft over Travis Kelce.
Okay.
I've got Kelce down at tight end 12.
Unreal.
Me, he and Mark Andrews are basically an identical bet in terms of the way that they score their points. We actually did have encouraging data points from a talent standpoint on Mark Andrews last year, according to tracking data from both humans and GPS, that he was still getting open a lot. Kelce fell off in terms of top speed, his open rates, his avoided tackles. There are a lot of things that suggest that he has hit his decline. Maybe that just changes because he's lost weight. Maybe last year was just a weird year. It's possible. But the way they score the points, really touchdown reliant. I like the chances of Andrews getting touchdowns more. Maybe the Chiefs offense bounces back in a big way, but Andrews was the primary red zone target for that team last year.
I like them both to bounce back, to be clear.
Yeah. You're higher than me on Andrews. You have him at tight end 9. I'm at tight end 11. The other guys I have higher than Kelce are Jake Ferguson, David Njoku, and TJ Hawkinson, among players that we haven't already mentioned, and then Sam Laporta, of course. So are you low on Laporta then? You basically never draft him, I would assume.
Yeah, I'll never draft Laporta. There's no scenario where I will draft him.
Yeah, I do think that he is a really great talent. His rookie year wasn't all just Ben Johnson. I think it was impressive what he was able to do last year, even while playing through an injury, from what I've heard. And I'm fine, like, if he falls to the perfect range, I'm fine betting on him, but I don't really draft him either. Okay,
it's mostly just the opportunity cost where you have to get him. You're giving up on too much talent at wide receiver and running back.
Let's give the people what they want. Colston Loveland propaganda, tight end 5 for me, tight end 6 for Dan. Both of us coming in above Tyler Warren, who is the rookie.
Way above consensus on Colston Loveland.
Of course, yes. Warren is the rookie tight end who is shooting up draft boards. People are still sleeping on Colston Loveland. The case is pretty like dense and nuanced, but like it's all really compelling stuff. He was amazing on a per opportunity base in college, and then we get the draft capital, and he lands here with the coordinator who's already engineered a tight end 1 overall season from a rookie, and has just like had ridiculous efficiency on a per opportunity, per route, per target basis at the tight end position, and has really leaned into the play action game to get easy looks for the tight end position. So that's where I'm at with Loveland, is like, it's a math thing, and then it's also loving his film, but I'll let you speak to the film.
Yeah, the film is where it starts for me. What I watched at Michigan reminded me a lot of a player I loved coming out of Michigan a few years back that got no fanfare until he blew up at the Senior Bowl, Nico Collins. And the reason I love Nico Collins is because on tape, you could see what he was capable of, but you could also see on tape what he was held back by, which was really poor passing game at Michigan.
Did you know that Loveland said Nico's like one of the primary guys he watches in terms of route running and trying to emulate his route running?
That's awesome. I love to hear that, because they are both really long route runners. They're long strided players, and they're both, in my mind at least, really good at chewing up ground when they run laterally, which is surprising. You look at these guys, both Nico and Loveland, you would look at them as more of like vertical players, right? Like a Romo Dunze type, somebody who's better moving forward than laterally. But both of them show an ability to cut laterally and to make up a lot of ground when they're running laterally. I think that's really where I get most excited when I break down the aspects of Loveland's tape that impressed me the most. It's that ability, and then it's that ability coupled with what Ben Johnson likes to do in his offense. I've said this from the start, Jacob. For me, I'm not saying it's a one-to-one thing. Everybody in fantasy, I know maybe JJ Zacharyson had a great thread on this. Like, everyone in fantasy needs to stop looking for X coordinator's new version of X, which is true to an extent. But I do think that the way that Ben Johnson's offense is designed, there will always be a role for an Amon-Ra St. Brown type, somebody who can win in that area of the field. And I've stated from the start, Burden, Moore, Romo Dunze, of course not, but Burden, Moore, Loveland is the best bet to fit that role. In my mind, to fit this offense to an extent. I love his talent. He's a massive human being who creates a lot of ground. I think the NFL will, like fantasy managers in the NFL will learn about him fast, Jacob, and that will be it. Once he is in and once people know about him, there'll be no going back from that point. He'll be a focal point potentially in what I think could be a much better offense.
Let's go. Conviction call here.
It's a conviction call. We'll see where it is. And you know what? If we are right on this one, Jacob, I'll be super excited. You know why? Because every single one of these players that were low in the rankings 2 months ago when we started this podcast have moved up the board. You can't get Ricky Pearsall cheap. You can't get Ibuka cheap. You can't get anybody cheap. Tyler Warren, you can't get cheap anymore, dude. You have to pay tight end 6 price in most drafts now. But Loveland is the one that just continues to sit low on every draft board. And I can continue to just get late round, last round. And so if it hits, it's going to feel even better because it's the one player that, nobody really still was drafting in the end of August, September.
I have T.J. Hawkinson next at tight end 6. Dan has him all the way down at 12. Do you want to elaborate on that? We think they're going to run more. You're not impressed by the player, not a high upside pick.
Yeah, I have a blind spot with Hawkinson. I hate Hawkinson from a fantasy standpoint. I really do. I don't understand. Like, now the case got a little bit better, right? Addison suspended. Jefferson, I think, is going to be fine for week 1. Well, bringing in Thielen can't be good for Hawkinson. But, like, I feel like his case, the Hawkinson case, has always been, it never really made sense to me. He was never a good player after the catch. He was never a dynamic player in space. At times, he was good in the red zone and a big touchdown scorer, but those times were with Kirk Cousins. Again, as I spoke to earlier with McCarthy, I think this offense is going to A, take a different shape and form, B, be less pass happy and less pass efficient. All those things can't help Hawkinson for me. I think what you're betting on with Hawkinson is 2 things. You're betting on either 1, targets to funnel through him until Addison gets back from his suspension, which is only 3 games and is not going to help us in the fantasy playoffs. Or 2, JJ McCarthy being awesome and utilizing him more on bootleg action where you can just hit him as that like easy outlet. But ultimately, I don't know where my points are coming from. I think the passing touchdowns will come down for the Vikings. He doesn't make explosive plays in the passing game. And I don't ultimately think he's going to be some like McBride type, which is what he would need to be from a reception and volume standpoint.
I think those are fair points. He's not somebody who I'm excited to draft, but I do think he's going to probably get a ton of looks early on. And he's been a productive player. That's basically where I'm at with it.
You know what we need to do, Jacob, I think is fair? We need to do and I got to think of what we can put on the line. Nothing monetary, obviously something more for fun, but a Kelce versus Hawkinson bet, because I have Kelce 5 and you have him 12 and you have Hawkinson 12 and I have Hawkinson 12 and you have him 6.
It doesn't feel fair because it's a player who you're high on and a player who I don't care about.
But I'm not actually high on Kelce because I don't draft
him at tight end 4.
I'm high on him compared to where you think, but like he's consensus 5.
You have him above Laporta bet.
Yeah.
I would do a Loveland.
But I don't draft any
I would
Kelce.
do a Loveland versus Kelce bet if you want to do that.
That is a terrible bet.
How? It's my tight end 5, your tight end 4.
Horrific bet. Why would I ever bet on somebody against somebody I love? We're talking about 2 you don't like Kelce and I don't like Hawkinson. And if you're unwilling to do that bet, then why do you have Hawkinson 6 spots ahead of Kelce?
I just conceded that it's fine. I'm not unwilling. I am just uninterested.
Okay, you know what? We'll pass on this one, Jacob. We'll come back to the board. We'll find something good at some point during the length of this podcast show. But you know what? We'll put this one on the table for now. I stand by it. If Kelce outscores Hawkinson by a good number, I'm taking a win on this.
He could easily just get more touchdowns. That's what's the most important.
The reason you say that is because you know he will.
I mean, I think his offense will produce more passing touchdowns than a rookie JJ McCarthy. So, like, yeah, it's a fair bet. I think you'll be able to trust TJ Hawkinson. Like in most leagues where it's a managed league, I don't want to have to deal with the Mark Andrews, Kelce types unless it's like tight end premium or something.
But what does trust mean? Like that's kind of my point.
You can start him at the beginning of the year.
I can start Kelce and Andrews, and I can get a touchdown that makes up for the 4 for 43 that I get from Hawkinson.
If Jefferson misses time or we've got the suspension with Addison, TJ Hawkinson is going to be scoring basically what Trey McBride scores.
No, I strongly disagree on that.
And unless McBride starts scoring touchdowns or something, their equation is very similar.
No, except McBride is really good at football and good at getting open.
I think Hawkinson is too. I don't think he's as good as McBride, but I do think he is a good player.
We strongly disagree on the player here. We have to move past this one.
Tucker Kraft. Tucker Kraft is next. Dan, I don't understand why you keep doing this, man. You're destroying the
I'm
brand.
not doing anything.
Tied at 14 on Tucker Kraft, man. We've talked about Tucker Kraft so many times. He's in our sleepers episode, and we've got Evan Ingram ahead of him. That's gross.
Sean Payton bump.
Tucker Kraft, I'm super psyched for. I've got him at tight end 7. He comes in just ahead of the Mark Andrews, Jake Ferguson, and Joe Gutierrez. No, just behind them. Sorry, he's tied with Dalton Kincaid in our composite rankings. I'm really excited about the potential if Green Bay passes more, if he's featured in a different way. His average depth of target has been so low, lower than any of these guys, below 6 through his first 2 seasons. He has an impossibly low number of targets beyond 10 yards. I tried to look it up to see, has Tucker Kraft been efficient on these looks? And it was there's been 6 of them. He doesn't get any opportunities on the field, but Jordan Love is talking about wanting to do more of that. So I'm really excited about him as a player. We've talked about all the awesome stuff he's done after the catch, just phenomenally efficient after the catch. Only George Kittle compares through an initial 2 seasons to what Kraft has done. So if we see that expanded, we've talked about being bullish on Love. It's just a bet on talent here, basically, with Kraft.
I like the bet on talent. I like Tucker Kraft. He's the very end of where I want to draft tight ends. I have 14 guys I want to draft, and I won't draft any. And I mean, I could be talked into Strange too, but I have 14 guys I really want to draft. And he's in that mix for me, Tucker Kraft. I don't have him too much below. It's a coin flip for a lot of these guys. Hawkinson, Ingram, and I draft him over Hawkinson, even though I have him ranked after him. To be quite frank, I probably would. Push comes to shove. I'm just never getting any Tucker Kraft because I'm getting Loveland in this spot or Ferguson or Kincaid. So that's they're all drafted in that same range. None of them cost any draft capital whatsoever. So for me, it's just kind of a bet against too many weapons there in Green Bay. Not a lot of upside for me, in my opinion, to have the offense funneled through him. So I guess it's that. A little bit of concern with that.
Why don't you talk about Evan Ingram then? Because we haven't really talked about him at all.
Not super high on Evan Ingram other than the fact that he's joining Sean Payton offense, and Sean Payton has done really well with tight ends over the years. And I think that from what I've read, he's in the mix for and will probably play in part with Harvey, that joker role in Sean Payton's offense, because he believes he's a good skill set fit for it, Evan Ingram. If he plays that role, dude, we could be looking at wild amount of volume for Evan Ingram this season. Good player, gets open, has done well throughout his career. So just a slight edge for me over a player like Kraft. I think the reason is the upside for more volume for me.
Where I'm at with Ingram is Sean Payton offenses haven't really focused on the tight end that much. And then Bo Nix last year had the lowest percentage of his targets going to tight end of anyone other than Daniel Jones.
But who was tight end there?
That's a totally fair point. But I think that the offense is designed, if it's short passing, it's 2 running backs or the Devon Vales and Marvin Mims and stuff. They have all these guys they do design stuff for. And
for now, but I think Ingram could be that guy.
Right. Maybe that's Ingram this year. His target rates have been really inflated by Doug Peterson, who is the opposite end of the spectrum more than any coordinator ever, really. He features the tight end position. The 2 single top highest reception totals at the tight end position in any given season both belong to Doug Peterson tight ends. Last year, if you look at open rates and stuff like that, Evan Ingram was the worst tight end in the league. Maybe that was just he wasn't healthy and he'll be better this year. I don't know, but he's aging and I don't like the system really. Yeah. I've been really confused by how high he's pushed up rankings.
We have a very different rate. I don't want to say, let me think the best way to phrase this. We have a very different opinion on where this system is going or where the design for the offense is going in that regard. I understand looking at Sean Payton's history recently, at least, tight ends haven't been featured in that offense, but that's my mind because they haven't had anyone. They tried to get someone. They drafted Greg Dulcich early in the NFL draft on day 2, and he was a total bust. I feel like now he's got his Dulcich, his move tight end, to me at least, with Ingram. And I don't think he had that at any point with the Broncos, but he has had it at times with the Saints. Do we have his numbers with the Saints? I'm sure tight ends did much better there.
Jimmy Graham did.
Right. I'm not saying Ingram is Jimmy Graham. Obviously, that's not the point. But Ingram is also not Greg Dulcich.
The preseason usage for Ingram, which could just be vanilla stuff, you don't know. But he was basically just run down the field. He didn't get hardly any targets. They did design a few things where it was a more real look at what the offense might want to be doing, and that was again to the running back position. I just haven't seen anything that makes me want to draft Ingram.
Making a good case. I'll be honest with you. I'm debating just dropping him a few spots after this.
I Britton Strange 1 spot ahead of him. So you've got Strange 2 spots behind him, and that's somebody we both like. I think he's kind of similar to Ingram in that he's probably going to be like an ancillary piece. Ingram's offense we feel a little bit more confident in, so that's totally fair. But I think the talent, I feel better about Strange. I really liked what we saw last year, and he's entering year 3, which is a prime breakout year for tight end. So that's why
I like the
lean more
talent
towards
better.
him.
I like the talent better. I dislike the role better. To me, again, I just think Ingram going to be a lot more volume than you're thinking. So I guess we're just off on that, which is fine.
Yeah. Unless they do design like a bunch of screens to him, I just don't think he's going to get targets. I think he's just going to be out there as a speed threat. We'll see.
Yeah.
Beyond that, we've got Zach Ertz, Hunter Henry, Dallas Goedert, and Kyle Pitts as the next guys here, getting into like kind of the gross range at tight end. You are relatively high on Ertz, or maybe I'm low, but I don't mean to be. He did play a meaningful role last year. No indication that Ben Sinnott is going to cut into that in year 2. Is he somebody you're actually targeting? You have him at tight end 16.
No, he's not somebody I'm actually targeting, but I do think he's a nice player to rank in that range for me because I think he has the rapport with Jaden Daniels and he could get a lot of receptions for PPR leagues. I feel safer with him than a lot of the players I've ranked after, even guys like Strange, who I see more upside for. I also see a lot more downside for, like if that offense does not have enough to fit him, Hunter, BTJ, and the running backs are going to have design plays in the passing and run game.
I think Ertz and Henry feel like really safe bets in this range, guys that you could plug in and tight end premium, whatever, like they could start for you. And I think there may be upside for Henry if the offense is better than we expect, but you probably shouldn't be.
I like that it's taken us to get down to like the nitty gritty, like tight end 14 through 16 for us to find our most disagreements and our most heated debates down here.
I mean, yeah, the top, it's like pretty easy unless you're just a crazy person who has Travis Kelce above Sam Laporta and then acts like that's not a hot take.
That is not a hot take. The hotter take is you not being willing to bet the Hawkins and Kelce thing when we both have them ranked 12th, respectively.
I told you I was willing to bet it. I don't.
You didn't think it was fair. You wanted me to give you Loveland versus Kelce. An insane thing to ask. Let's move forward, though.
Insane to ask my tight end 5 versus
mine too. My 6. What do you want from me? My breakout versus my old guy that I still rely on. I'm taking the breakout.
Dallas Goedert is another name I would point out here as somebody who actually might have some upside. It's kind of rare to find upside in this range. But if anything happens to either of the top receivers there, Dallas Goedert's really, really, really good. Max Toscano, look him up on Twitter. It's like, remember the tight ends is his Substack. He does just like really detailed work studying the tight end position. And he's like convinced that Dallas Goedert is like one of the best tight ends in the league. I swear he had him at like 2 or 3 or something like that.
He is great on tape. No, he's a fun watch. He's always hurt.
Really good player, really good with the ball in his hands. Obviously a good offense. So there's upside there if the circumstances change in any way that would impact his target share. Beyond that, none of these guys are that interesting to me. I do want to point out that we both have T. Ferg in this 23-24 range, and that's interesting. We're talking about Terrence Ferguson for the Rams. Did you get any eyes on Terrence Ferguson preseason film, man? We got Terrence Ferguson. We got Terrence Ferguson out here versus like second and third stringers.
Torching him, huh?
Yeah, he looks like a god amongst men, man. He's so
maybe fast. He'll be everything that I was hoping Luke Musgrave would be before he got hurt a million times.
He's a way better mover in my opinion. Okay. Like if you get a chance, look up my name with Terrence Ferguson's name and you'll see he's doing a bunch of like hesitation on his routes. He's doing a bunch of like timing based stuff, like changing the tempo that I don't feel like we saw from Musgrave as much. And he's a similar type of like size speed bet too. You know? The Rams are super psyched to get him. There were rumors that the Rams were willing to take him in round 1. They've been linked to Brock Bowers. They've been linked to Colston Loveland. They were potentially willing to take Ferguson in round 1. They end up getting this great trade with the Falcons and moved down to round 2, still get him. And they were psyched. This was their first pick in this year's draft. I think it's going to be Higbee, like normal, as a starting tight end out of the gate. But Ferguson is definitely a player to keep an eye on, especially in any deeper leagues where these deeper tight end names matter.
Yep, I'm with that.
Do you have any Mason Taylor film thoughts? We haven't really talked about him. You were lower than me. You have him at 26. I have him at tight end 21.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, for fantasy standpoint, I have him ranked lower because I don't have any faith at all in the Jets passing game, and I don't want any real pieces of a passing game that I think could be looking at like 3,000 yards and 16 passing touchdowns.
Yeah. The only one I think worth mentioning here at the bottom. Well, actually, I do want to bring up Chig Okonkwo. You didn't have him in your top 30. I had him at tight end 20. It wasn't a great year for him. A lot of those awesome per route rates from early in his career came like crashing down to earth last year. But he has been playing like almost every snap with the starters this preseason, and we're both pretty excited about the Titans offense.
Sure.
So I just wanted to see if you had any thoughts on Okonkwo.
Nothing too crazy. I just liked some of the players that I had ranked above him.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. I've got him at 20, so I have him one spot above Mason Taylor. I have him above Jonnu Smith. I think he's an intriguing upside catch and run guy if he's playing that much. We'll see. Like I really, really like Gunnar Helms' film, who's there in Tennessee as well. So he might cut into the role.
Totally different kind of tight end too. That actually think fit their system a lot better.
And they could play complementary to each other if there's no like the receivers are weird there, man. Like there's nobody that inspires much confidence outside of Ridley. Restrepo didn't make the team, and so like the slot opportunities could be open to Okonkwo a lot, you know. Just an interesting guy to keep an eye on because he's shown really intriguing ability with the ball in his hands at times in his career.
Yeah.
Speaking of intriguing ability with the ball in his hands, we've got to talk about Harold Fannin, man. Tight end 30 for Dan. I've got him all the way up at tight end 18. So he comes in just outside of our top 24 composite rankings. Do you have any thoughts on Fannin? Do you think that it's just not going to be there in year one in terms of fantasy relevance? People are getting excited. People are like pushing and joking down the board.
Well, look, this ranking has nothing to do with the player. I was a huge fan of Harold Fannin's tape, just like you were, and his profile heading into the NFL. I also like, from a fantasy standpoint, for these deeper leagues, that he's running a lot with the starters ready. But on the flip side of that, I'm just worried about how long we're going to get Flacco. The minute this thing turns to Gabriel and Sanders, I want no part of any player on this Browns offense. And that would include a player who's like a second tight end like Fannin.
Yeah, that's fair. I'm intrigued enough by what we've seen in the preseason. They're designing targets to him. He's out there playing basically the same percentage of the snaps with the starters as Njoku. They were rotating them on a few plays when they were in just one tight end sets. And then obviously the massive production in college. And I liked his film. So I'm intrigued enough to take him in deeper leagues or leagues where this range of the tight ends might matter. So for reference, I've talked about some upside tight ends. I have Goddard one spot ahead of Fannin, and I've got Fannin ahead of Okonkwo, Fannin ahead of Mason Taylor, ahead of Kyle Pitts, and Jonnu Smith and Terrence Ferguson, Isaiah Likely, some of those players. Theo Johnson is the last one I wanted to hit
make sure we talk about him.
Yeah, go for it. You got him at tight end 21. I'm at tight end 28, and I didn't mean to be low because I do think he's interesting.
Yeah, for Theo Johnson, in his first season with the Giants, played almost all of the snaps exclusively. That will jump even further this year. He will be on the field for almost every snap. They love him because he's a two-way tight end who has the frame to block and looked good on tape blocking last year. Is only going to get better there, plus some upside as a receiver. By some upside, I mean, according to relative athletic score, Jacob, he was the best relative athletic score testing athlete since Jimmy Graham at the tight end position. 97th percentiles in some of these key spots like length, hand size, speed, size, combination, and looked pretty damn good. He had a play this preseason with Jackson Dart, a 35-yard screen pass where he looked dynamic in the open field. So I think there's a chance for him to really break out potentially given the snap share. And by breakout, I mean, obviously on a Giants offense, there's a cap and there's a ceiling to that. It's going to be one of the worst offenses, but being like more in that, tight end 15, 16 range.
I loved his film, man. He really was interesting going after the ball. And then when the ball was in his hands, he had to make a lot of plays to go get the ball because of these throws not being on target a lot. The per route data doesn't necessarily support that he would be a productive enough player to be usable in fantasy, which is kind of where I landed on him. Is I don't have a lot of faith in the offense, and I would just rather take shots on some of these other guys. But if you're just looking for upside, I'm fine pushing him ahead of some of the guys I have ranked ahead of him. You have I have Mike Gesicki 2 spots ahead of him. You have him 1 spot ahead of him. They're pretty similar to me, and I think that the Bengals are just so much better. Like, do you think that the target distribution will shift in any sort of meaningful way? Like, are we finally going to get over all the Wan'Dale Robinson targets? If Dart's in there, maybe. I don't know.
Even if Russell's in there, it's not going to be. It shouldn't be the case.
Wilson, yeah, probably is honestly our better bet. They ran a lot of like screens and stuff with Dart. Man, if we could shift some of that target share over, because like I said, Daniel Jones had the lowest tight end percentage last year in terms of targets to the tight end position. And I think that it was just like the offense was just funneled through those 2 guys at receiver, Neighbors and Wan'Dale.
Yeah, for sure. So we'll see how that offense evolves, and it will definitely change if they go to Dart too. So just something to keep in mind. But I do like Theo as a talent bet.
Yeah. All righty. Good stuff. 2 hours.
2 hours on quarterbacks, tight ends. We know how this is going to go. Look, we did mention that we were going to get to listener questions and auction strategy and auction breakdown today. We are not going to do that because this took a little bit longer, and the Draftathon is going to be live on FFT in less than an hour. We would never want to impose on that. Plus, I'll be on Draftathon, Jacob, so I need to get ready and prepare for my appearance there. Tomorrow, we will come back at you with wide receiver, which I can only imagine how long that position is going to take to break down and get through all these guys. And then we're also going to do listener questions. So I did promise you, and if you did leave a rating and review, and in that review asked a question, we will answer those questions tomorrow. In addition to talking a little auction draft, salary cap draft with you. Thank you so much for tuning in with us today to be on the box score. Please hit the like button. Please subscribe. Please share the show. Do all of those things for us. And we will continue to come at you with fantasy content. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.